The April 8th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth School Board to order. Welcome everyone that's here tonight. We will begin with the roll call.
Matt Curtin.
Present.
Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Pip Clues. Here. Brian French.
Here.
Lee Hudson.
Liz here.
He was here. Byron Maddow.
Here.
Carrie Nolte.
Here.
Lisa Rappaport.
Here.
Eric Moore.
Here.
Nathan Delaney.
Matt, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Are you Greenland, Rye, Newington, Newcastle? Which one?
I'm Rye.
By me?
I'm Rye.
Right. Okay. Well, welcome. It's
Thank
nice
you.
to have you here. Okay, let's go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have announcements and recognitions. Does anyone have anything they would like to announce? Recognize?
I think just in terms of announcements, I know that we had a variety of conversation going on in the community around federal funds and what are we communicating to federal agencies about. What are we complying with? What are we not complying with? And I just wanted to make sure that the public was clear. The conversation, there's several different parts of this that have been conflated. And what we're really talking about most immediately is a request from the Trump administration to certify our compliance with their interpretation of Title VI, which is connected to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So we had initially, and I think we'll come back to the public with more conversation about this, is we, through me, had initially signed off on that document, saying that we would comply with expectations under Title VI. We have since rescinded that signature. There's a lot to this story and a lot about that we're still trying to figure out about the best path forward. And I know that the board is planning to meet in a non-public, non-meeting tomorrow with council to discuss what are our best paths forward in relation to this kind of grant season. Now, the thing that we're responding to most immediately is a request to understand what we did with current funds right now. But we are going to be up against that question again as we roll into this period of the year. Usually at the end of the year, it's when we are, portions of that are things that come directly through my office, and portions are things that come to the school board that the school board sees, makes decisions on, and then the school board chair, after a vote of the school board, and signs off on it, as I do as well. We haven't hit that part of our normal cycle. The thing that people are hearing about in the press is connected to something different that has come out of the U.S. Department of Education that we are trying to work through how to respond to. But I did want to acknowledge I did initially sign off on it, as I felt that we did not have any programs that were going to be out of compliance with this, and we had we wanted to make sure we're continuing to access between $2.6 and $3 million in federal funds with the district. But I think it's a good conversation for us to slow down. The deadline has been extended on responding to this for us to rescind the initial agreement, and then to have a conversation with council, which we will be doing tomorrow, and then take steps from there. So I just want to make sure, because that was swirling around, we don't have an agenda item tonight to talk about it, because it was inside of 24 hours for us to warn the agenda. But I wanted to make sure the public was aware that we are taking a next step, and the next step will be tomorrow night. So.
Pip.
I just wanted to follow up on what Zach's speaking about, because I think there is a policy meeting coming up that relates to or triggers some of these same emotions that people are having about this, about federally required policies or laws that are impacting our policies. So we have a meeting on next week, April 16th at 11 a.m., which we have decided to invite some extra people to, and we will have legal counsel there. This is a meeting of the policy committee, where we'll be addressing 3 policies that are, that include, that are 3 of our policies that are specific to gender identity. So I just wanted the public to be aware of that as well.
In time and place?
11 a.m. in the school board conference room on the 16th.
Okay. Anyone else have an announcement? Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to acceptance of minutes. We have the March 25th non-public meeting minutes and the March 25th regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Brian and Tish. Any discussion? Yes, Pip?
There are 2 votes on which I voted no and expressed an opinion or a reason for my no vote, and I would like to have that statement of dissent included in the minutes if we could.
Okay.
I can tell you which ones they
Yeah,
were.
tell us where it is.
Let's see. I think it was
The policies?
sorry, let me go back to this. Okay, I'm sorry, the first one was under old business, section A. And then the second one was new business, also section A. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not that one. I don't think I gave a reason for that one. Consideration approval of policies was the other one.
Do you want to say what you want to say, or just?
I don't think that would be appropriate because,
We could go back
Yeah.
and look
Oh,
at,
I
Pull it
see.
out of the
Okay, okay.
transcript. Yep.
get the essence of
Okay.
what that was.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I always forget.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Pip Clues,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Abstain.
Byron Meadow,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
passed.
Thank you, everyone. Next, we have our public comment session. We have 2 speakers that have signed up. Please come to the podium. If you could give us your name and address, you have 3 minutes to speak. The first one is Brandy Keevan.
Hi, and thank you for having me. My name is Brandy Keevan, and I did attend a recent school meeting discussing redistricting. We have a 4-year-old son who's currently in the PEAP program at Little Harbor for the last 2 years. Since the moment he was diagnosed with ASD, I worried about his journey through this world, how he was going to thrive, be independent, happy, and healthy. I cried during our first IEP meeting at Little Harbor, giving our trust over to the Little Harbor teachers, speech, OT providers, and his para. Our son is autistic with a global developmental delay and nonverbal. He requires routine, familiar environments, and structure to learn and for safety. Excuse me. Special education program services and teachers at Little Harbor are amazing, and I couldn't be more thankful. Christian's teachers tell us he is ready for kindergarten. Despite our home being surrounded by homes that are attending Little Harbor, we are zoned Dondero. When we learned Portsmouth Elementary Schools were being redistricted due to overcrowding at Dondero, I thought, great, this is a win-win. We can help alleviate the population challenge at Dondero and keep our son thriving in a familiar environment at Little Harbor. I filled out the parent survey. I attended the school meeting in January explaining our concerns, location, situation. I spoke with a few board members and felt seen, heard, understood, valued, and very confident that it would not be an issue to redistrict. All I had to do was write a letter to the superintendent, explain our location and Christian's special needs, and ask for a very reasonable and logical accommodation to stay at Little Harbor, and wait for our letter asking which school we would like him to attend. The school choice letter never arrived. I reached out to the administration of Little Harbor. I emailed the Little Harbor principal and was sure this was an error. On March 13th, I wrote a letter to Superintendent McLaughlin stating all of the above concerns and referenced our address, which is 802 Middle Road. Basically, every house on the opposite side of our street is Little Harbor, from number 260 to 969. In the name of inclusion, we at least should have had the opportunity to be included in that ask. On March 6th, 10th, and 11th, on March 3rd, I wrote to Superintendent McLaughlin. I already said that. On March 6th, 10th, and 11th, I followed up via email trying to confirm my email had been received. No reply. On March 13th, 10 days after my initial email, Superintendent McLaughlin replied saying, I'm not familiar with what you had mentioned from the meeting. I can tell you that your address does not fall into a neighborhood being realigned to Little Harbor as part of our final approved redistricting plan. There is no special carve-out for students who have attended PEEP. I thought I was in the twilight zone. On 3/14, I wrote again to the superintendent asking for a reconsideration. No reply. I followed up with a phone call asking for a call back to walk me through the decision and why. No reply. On 3/17, I emailed again asking for a reconsideration. No reply. I called again several times asking for clarity, a phone call, a face-to-face meeting, everything. May I continue?
You can continue.
Every time I got the runaround from his assistant. At one point, his assistant said, I spoke with the superintendent. He's not going to change his mind, and he's happy to tell you no again. That's how you reply to a distressed parent? I asked his assistant, who can I talk to help me understand the reasoning behind the decision and why special needs and inclusion with others on our road are not being considered? Her answer was, email the school board members or speak at an upcoming school board meeting. My personal opinion is that the superintendent had dug his heels in at that point and was not going to budge simply because I was now being a pain in his butt. On 3/26, I emailed the board members. I heard back from Nancy and Byron. Nancy said she talked to the superintendent and he would get back to me. Byron replied, acknowledging my persistence regarding Christian, and recommended that I ask for the superintendent for an exception. If he didn't approve, I could request an appeal before the board, but that might need an attorney to navigate the process. As of today, April 8th, I have still not received a courtesy return phone call or a face-to-face meeting. If anyone had said, hey, Mom, come in, let's discuss it. I think I can alleviate your concerns. Let's go through the special education program at Dondero. That probably would have been the end of it, but it has now turned, in my mind, into something much bigger than the redistricting consideration. Here are my questions. Number one, what is the job of the superintendent and the school board if it isn't to help parents navigate and advocate for the special needs of their child? Number two, how do parents advocate for their children if they cannot have a back and forth conversation with the people who make the decisions? Number three, how do parents trust a district and its highest ranking decision makers if they cannot be involved in their education outcomes? Number four, if moving a special needs student from one school to another within district is this daunting with justifiable reasons, how challenging is it for families to have to move a kiddo out of district to receive services? Parents should not need an attorney. Has an education official received a special accommodation exception for their own child that would have been automatically denied to anyone else in the district? Number
Randy,
six.
can you kind of sum up?
Yes, I'm almost done. Being told that being at Little Harbor PEEP doesn't automatically mean you have additional consideration, but socioeconomic diversity in the classroom was a consideration for redistricting. How do I wrap my head around that, right? Socioeconomic diversity in a classroom was on the parent survey. Is this a concern for your child? But I didn't see anything around special education. Being a parent of a child with special needs comes with constant worry and prayer. We give all of our trust to the schools and districts to help our children learn, be safe, and thrive. It takes remarkable amount of courage, dedication, tenacity to stand up for what we feel is right and in the best interest of our child. We battle insurance companies for basic coverage, specialists for appointments, often work multiple jobs to afford private therapy. We shouldn't have to battle the district too, especially for a reasonable accommodation. And the bottom line is when a parent comes to you and asks you for help, I'm happy to tell you no again is not okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Robichar.
Hi, my name is Emily Robichaud, and I live at 77 Holly Lane. I'm an English teacher at Portsmouth Middle School and a parent to 2 students at New Franklin Elementary. The opinions I present tonight are purely my own. On Friday night, I wrote a letter to all board members regarding how the district would be handling certifying compliance with its current anti-discrimination mandates. Thank you for addressing that at the start of this meeting. I understand that these are really tricky matters because what is a community supposed to do when the federal government says that these are the new expectations, follow them, or risk losing funding, or worse, be prosecuted, which is a reality now facing many American teachers and administrators. However, my strong request is that the board and city work together to engage the community in a process by which we figure out how we will respond to mandates that are so grossly misaligned with the values of our community. In July of 2022, the district began working on a mission and visioning project. I was asked to be part of the steering committee that collaborated with Great Schools Partnership to facilitate that work. Over the next 2 years, the district invested a great deal of time, money, and resources to facilitate stakeholder focus groups during the school day, in the evenings, and on weekends to gauge the needs, values, and perspectives of all community members. Over and over in those focus groups, we heard from families who wanted to see more resources allotted to social emotional learning and a greater focus on kindness and character development, not just a focus on traditional content and curriculum goals. That then led into Portsmouth Strategic Planning Committee, for which I was also asked to serve on the steering committee. The 3 focus areas for that plan are derived from the portrait, and they are our commitment to a rigorous and aligned K-12 curriculum, building educator capacity, and student safety, well-being, and belonging. The document that was put before the board and school department is outlined by scathing criticism of both SEL and DEI that directly attacks our goal to promote student well-being and belonging. According to the Federal Education Department, we would be a district labeled as, quote, toxically indoctrinating students, by telling them they should be inclusive, be good people, and open a history book. It's also an attack on our commitment to an authentic, comprehensive, and rigorous curriculum centered on truth and good citizenship. We don't have to guess at whether mandates like this are not in line with our core values as a district. We know they aren't. Some of us were asked by our bosses to give 3 years of our unpaid time to serve on committees to help ensure we were able to accurately capture those values and align them to what we do. We do that work because it matters. But it doesn't really matter if we aren't going to stick by those values, if we don't fight for them, if we cave when Title IX is undermined or DEI is mind-numbingly referred to as discriminatory. Any document that says this is who we are, this is what we believe, does not matter if we don't also create a plan to protect it when conflict arises. That's one of the main purposes of a mission statement. And according to our district website, our strategic plan is meant to serve as, quote, our public-facing North Star. So my question is to the board and really to the city is, what are you going to do when the people above you are trying to point you away from that North Star? Where is your line in the sand? Which exact civil rights will we risk giving up and letting be stripped away? What are we not going to allow? Will we stand by our belief in curriculum autonomy and our value of diversity? Will we stand by our LGBTQ community members? I'm almost done. Portsmouth is a community of great privilege. We have an opportunity to be an exemplar in the state of New Hampshire. My hope as a teacher, and even more so as a mother, is that we are willing to start wading into the waters of John Lewis-style good trouble instead of choosing to look our children in the eyes and tell them, sorry, we were just following orders.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Emily. Oh, okay. Come up, please. How are you?
Julie Gallett, 10 Fletcher Street. So I'm here tonight to tell you all that I really appreciate all the efforts to redistricting, even though my neighborhood and one of my children is actually going to be severely impacted by this. But I'm here tonight to tell you that there is one good thing that came out of this, which is that New Franklin, the community there, is working really hard to start a garden. So I wanted all of you to know that that is happening. We have our first meeting tomorrow night. So that's really exciting. I would like to echo some of what the other people have said this evening. I am confused as to why this parent on this road isn't able to have her child stay in a community that knows and feels comfortable to them. I think it's pretty reasonable, especially given the location that she is. If you were to drive through that, and if anyone drove through that, I think you would understand that during the redistricting, maybe that should have also been moved over, because now they're on their own little island across the street from people that are going to a different school. I would also, and I'm not sure if this is going to happen at the meeting tomorrow that you have, but it sounds like there's going to be more mandates and things coming from the federal government over the next 4-ish years here that we're living through. And it would be nice if you as a board kind of came together and figured out a way to make the people in this community feel more at home and comfortable with the reason why you're here, which is this checks and balance system, to let us know that how we're going to be impacted by this as these new mandates come out and what your plan is. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak?
Yep, we have one.
Nobody? on
Yep,
Zoom?
we have one.
Oh, okay. Please give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Hi. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Kara Vidicic, and my address is 8 Dunlin Way in Portsmouth. I also wanted to make a comment about the most recent developments in the school district, especially in the face of the emboldened executive branch that has started dismantling the safeguards and protections in the public sector. I think the schools have gotten more attention. So what I was hoping to do tonight is make sure you understand that what we are fighting for in the streets on the federal level is the same fight tonight on the local level, where we need to push back against all the laws and this administration's interpretation of gender identity and DEI policy. So I'm hoping that the letter that you have signed on behalf of this school community is something that you would reconsider and rescind, because I also want to reiterate that once a group in our community is targeted, I feel like we are all targeted. And that's where I personally draw the line in the sand. And I hope you feel the same way, because schools should be inclusive and protective of all the students, of all the staff, of all forms of all ideas and free speech. There shouldn't be anyone who feels unsafe speaking, thinking, talking in schools. I also think that the conversation that we need to have with the state should be around funding and how the schools can be helped to help the teachers and students carry out their mission, not about these policies that are seem to be a distraction from what we should be doing, which is funding schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Patty? No. Oh, okay.
One more here. Hi, I'm Sarah Gatchell. I live at 120 Hillcrest Drive in Portsmouth. And I had something prepared, but alas, cell phone's not working with the uploading the data, so I'm coming off this as best as I can. I'm here to speak about the issue with the DOE letter and to just
Can you speak into the microphone, honey? We can't hear you.
Sure. I'm here to speak about the DOE letter as well, and to reiterate sort of what Emily said. I am not working in the school system any longer, but I've worked as a paraeducator at the middle school for the past 6 years, and I can attest to the fact, having been in a lot of different classrooms, that our teachers always have the best interests of our students at their heart, and teaching them the core ideas of kindness and having investigative minds and being explorers and form their own opinions. Nobody's ever indoctrinating anybody, I can promise you that. And so I guess I would just say we need to approach all these things with caution that are happening right now, because I feel like a lot of it is slipping in very subversively under the door without people knowing. I know that today, when I learned about this, I actually emailed an NFS parent that I was and PTO member my 5th grade email class list, which I had to go cross back through and find out like who's still in district or not. And I heard from a bunch of different people that were like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm just hearing about this now. And So I understand I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting because I got here late, but I understand that it seems like you guys were not aware of maybe the differences. And I would just suggest that there really needs to be some sort of very public discussion because we want our kids to be informed voters. That's the purpose of public education. And that means having them consider things and letting their educators do what educators do best, which is care for and teach their kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we all set? Anyone else? Okay. I declare the public comment session closed. Okay, let's move on the agenda. I guess we turn it over to Zach.
So we've been doing a series of conversations around activities that are supporting some of the work that we're doing in connection with Portrait Graduate and the strategic plan, and how those activities are starting to advance those goals. So we've had folks in before for a couple of different sessions. Tonight we have two more conversations that we want to have with you. One is around the elementary essential standards, and the other is around the PEEP program. So I'd like to introduce the folks who are coming up to speak to the elementary essential standards work that we've been doing in the district. And I think Stacy Weeks is going to lead us in that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Good evening, everyone. As Zach mentioned, I'm here to discuss and share with you the work that we've been doing around essential standards. I think it's important first as I start this is I'm going to probably use the word we a lot tonight, and I just want to emphasize what that we means, because the work that has been done around the essential standards has been outstanding work done by many people within the district. Meaning special educators, the teachers, our guided coalition, our math interventionist, our reading specialists. And I think as I walked through this, none of this work could be done without them. So I just want to make sure that before my nerves take over and before I get to the end, that I highlight that. So I think it makes sense to kind of walk you through the timeline of how this work has been done over the course of really, it's been about a year that we have been working on the essential standards, and it's pretty amazing to think about where we are after just over a year, given what this work has entailed. So I'm going to just kind of jump into connecting with you and making the connections between the work that we've been doing with essential standards and how they tie into the work that is also being done simultaneously with the strategic plan and also with the professional learning communities that are principals kind of led into that nicely for me tonight. Because really the essential standards work has been done looking through the lens of a PLC. And so I just want to draw your attention again to some of what was noted with the principals last time around just kind of that professional learning community, because really our jumping off point for the essential standards was those 4 essential questions that go with the professional learning communities. Number 1 being, what do we want our students to know and be able to do? That was our jumping off point. That's really at the core of what essential standards are. And quite frankly, essential standards are kind of at the heartbeat of both the professional learning communities and the district strategic plan. So when we think about the essential standards, we're thinking about what is it that we want kids to know. And you're going to see tonight that I'm going to talk to you about how we made those decisions about what we want children to know. And then also, what is it, how do we know when they know it or when they don't know it, is another big piece of the work that we did around the essential standards. So as I kind of walk through this, try to keep these 4 questions in mind around the professional learning communities, but also you're going to see elements of the work with the rigorous aligned curriculum and instruction that play into this as well, because certainly our work with the essential standards has brought in the connections between our staff members and establishing the standards that we really were honing in on, as well as kind of the consistency of our professional development. So all of this kind of is woven together. It's kind of difficult to pull them apart. Patty, if you want to go to the next slide. So I figured it made sense to kind of start you off in understanding what an essential standard is, starting in the same place that we started our teachers off. As we started to do this work, we needed to share with them and give them an understanding of what essential standards were and what they meant to their work in their classrooms and across the district, and how that work would get done. So I'm just going to share a brief clip from Anthony Muhammad, who actually spoke at one of the conferences that I believe when Little Harbor went to Salt Lake City, he was one of the speakers, and many people were very drawn to him, and you'll see why in a moment. But definitely being an essential standard guru, and he will reference some other leaders in this in the conference that also speak to essential standards and PLCs. So Patty, if you just want to.
Hang on. We got an issue. Of course, technology. Do we have it on our computer?
Business for your teams. Organize people in your teams. You give them time. You develop norms. Here's what you want to do. You want to working through what the state, your district, and the school says that students should know be able to do their subject matter at their grade.
So it looks like I get to talk more.
Right. Can we kill that?
That's so funny. Well,
Try it again. All right.
here we
No
go.
luck. Okay.
Do your best.
I'll give it my
Anthony.
best. Yes,
Yeah.
no, that's fine. So I'll try to capture what Anthony shares in the video, and basically talking about how essential standards are making the difference between what is nice to know and what we must know, and being able to look at standards so that basically the message being there's a broad and wide set of standards that teachers need to cover every single year. And when you look at them collectively across the curriculum, hundreds, and it feels impossible at times for teachers to be able to get through all of those standards. So what the essential standards being those standards that we say a student, it is essential that they leave that grade level knowing, all students leave knowing these standards and are proficient within those standards, so that it's not just trying to cover everything, but digging into those standards that students will leave knowing and being able to connect those to their learning across the grade levels. So what he then goes on to do is talk about a protocol that helps teachers decide what those essential standards are. And so we went through a similar protocol with the help of a consultant, but also during some of our PD time, and looking at standards. And we took teachers through a process of, we had a spreadsheet that had the list of every single standard for math and literacy at every single grade level in every domain. And we walked through each one of those standards in small groups, grade levels, deciding which of those we felt like were essential standards. So the guide for that was using the word REAL, and thinking about the acronym of REAL and looking at standards as to whether they were relevant, meaning does this standard serve as a prerequisite for future learning? So Anthony Muhammad kind of uses an analogy of, he uses the mnemonics, thinking about an onomatopoeia and students understanding what an onomatopoeia is and spending 2 weeks on that versus spending time on teaching informational text and the importance and difference between those two. That, of course, an essential standard would be a must-know, knowing that an informational text would be where teachers would want to spend their time. So that would be something that would be relevant to them over the course of their education, but also into the future. And then, is it enduring? So as teachers were looking at this, they were checking and seeing how many boxes could this check. Does the standard represent something that students will need to know in the long term? And then, is it authentic? Does this standard represent something that lends itself to some real world, authentic opportunities for students to demonstrate their learning? So again, thinking about what is the long term on this? Is this something that they will apply as they move through the grades? And then leverage. Does the standard integrate into other content areas? So if you are writing informational text, and can you do that in science? Can you do it in social studies? Is it something that carries over into other content areas? So we walked through this process. Teachers checked off the boxes to see where this would fall, and then certain standards rose to the top. The goal, and in some cases out of 72 standards, was to bring this down to 10 to 12 standards that we felt were essential for students to walk away with. Now, I want to emphasize that this did not mean that we were not teaching the other standards. It meant that we were leaning into these essential standards, and they were also the standards that we'd intervene with on if students weren't understanding them. It was a standard that we wanted to be sure all students knew as they moved on to the next grade. So through that work, we then synthesized that down to the list of essential standards. By the beginning of this year, we had a document that we had in the hands of our educators, and they were able to look vertical and horizontal so that they could see what those essential standards and looking at the connections from one grade to the next. Of course, within this process, I would be remiss to say that this is something that we'll continue to go back to. It's not a one and done, but as we work with these standards, it's something that teachers will kind of say, well, this standard seemed like we need to, there's a standard that's missing, or there's something that we need to kind of revisit here. So those essential standards then became the base of a lot of the work that we were doing with our math. Just to kind of also shed some light on that, while we were doing this with our professional development, which was definitely huge, work, and we were also piloting a math program. So we were trying to provide professional development on the math program while we were also trying to roll out essential standards, make decisions around what we felt like were the must-knows for our teachers, and then make the connections between those content areas as well. So we continued to work on that, and then we moved into this year. A big piece was then unpacking those essential standards. And when I say unpacking essential standards, I kind of mean, so if you think about a lottery, you're picking your numbers. If you pick your numbers well, you can win big. So if we think about target standards, we needed to really examine those essential standards and think about what are those numbers, what are the pieces that will lead us to the success of those essential standards, so that we were guaranteeing a viable curriculum for all students. And so the target skills ultimately are those lessons that, when put together, lead to the proficiency of those essential standards. So we look at those as kind of the breadcrumbs leading to the accomplishment of that, the day-to-day lessons that teachers are teaching, and also the lessons that when we reflect back on through assessments, we can kind of dig into and look at those prerequisite skills of what was it that I missed, what was a piece of that pre-learning that led to the essential standard that I missed that a student didn't get there. So you can go to the next one, Patty. So that kind of leads into the assessment. So the principals also talked a bit about kind of the types of assessment that are being done at the elementary level. And of course, all educators lean into for different reasons at different times. And we really leaned heavily into what we call the common formative assessments. This was something that was fairly new to teachers in terms of the application of it. We would think of formative assessments of how am I collecting information from my students on a day-to-day basis, bringing that back and talking with my team. But the common formative assessment required a bit more because the teachers needed to be making decisions on a team together, choosing assessments or creating questions that got at some of those essential standards, and they were giving the same question at the same time in the same way. So then when they came together in their PLCs, they were looking at all the data for our kids versus just the data in their own classrooms, which then opened up a very different level of conversation about what is it that is happening in each of the classrooms or instructions, being able to share where some of the challenges were, where the strengths were. And so that common formative assessments often would give us information before teachers were getting to the summative assessments at the end of some of our topics in math. So the summative assessments were happening at the same time as the common formative assessments, but the common formative assessments were still trying to kind of see the power of those, because ultimately you should be able to know where kids are at before they get to that summative assessments by those common formative assessments. With the summative assessments, we have been collecting data to a point where teachers are like, okay, enough data. But at the same time, it's been such a rich for the conversations that we've been having, not only at their grade levels, but also cross-district. So this is just an example of a piece of a spreadsheet, and I want to highlight a couple things that teachers have utilized with their summative assessments, which have then lent themselves to some really rich conversations, both at individual schools, but more importantly, at the district level when our schools have come together. If you look at either one of these pieces here, you're going to notice that the standards are highlighted in red. Those standards highlighted in red are the essential standards. So we were on these spreadsheets collecting not only information about the essential standards, but about other standards in our math program. So then we were able to do an item analysis for each of those essential standards for each of the topic tests that then we could look at across the entire topic or across the year of the work that we've done for the essential standards. So at the bottom of the spreadsheet on the left, you'll see the percentages that all students performed in those classes, with the goal for us being, with essential standards, getting at least 80% or above. Now, I also want to point out these are for our math program, which again is new. For some teachers, this is their second year, but for about 50% of the teachers, it is their first year doing it. This is also not, we want our students to achieve their essential standards by the end of the year. You're going to notice there are some really great percentages for, mid-year for where kids are performing. So one way to kind of collect data to then bring our teachers together, and this has been part of our district work when we brought all three schools together to discuss the progress with not only the essential standards, but also the math program. So at our most recent professional development workshop, we actually took the essential standards, a couple of the essential standards for each grade level, shared with the grade levels the percentages that they performed on each of those standards, And then we used a protocol to have them kind of look at this work collectively so that they could share some of kind of their successes and also reflect on, what are some changes that could potentially be made, or really gather information from one another to strengthen their own teaching strategies, but also to better kind of walk away with new ideas. So this was really a powerful conversation between the schools with the teachers to kind of look at this. And you can see, again, we've got some really, really great numbers. So it was really exciting to be able to share that work. And again, that's averages for all kids, not just, 80% of the kids. It's 100% of our students are in this. So what has happened as we've done this work with Essential Standards, the best part of this, aside from the data, I definitely can kind of geek out on the data piece, and I'm sorry if I bored you with that and went a little overboard with that, but the part that has been so celebratory and that I feel like I've had the gift of seeing every time that we've brought the district together has been that collaboration that has happened between the schools. Most recently, I sat in with every single team in the district, and my first question for them, just to kind of reflect and kind of think about what were some of the pieces that, as we move into next year and kind of thinking about and continuing our work with Essential Standards, with more of a focus in literacy than the math, as we kind of shift around a little bit with that, even though math is never ending. Was my first question to them was, what did you think about, how did you feel about coming together at the district level when we were doing that work? And again and again and again, I heard from teachers just how powerful that was. Now, that wasn't without growing pains. I mean, I think that it wouldn't be fair to say that, that first meeting was just great. We learned a lot from those first few meetings, and we, like those relationships and building those relationships between the schools. And now the result of that with the Essential Standards and the conversations, we've got teams with folders that they plop information into. They've got emails going back and forth. Just the other day, I got an email from interventionist at Dendero saying, hey, the first grade team reached out and they want to shift this question and they're wondering how other people feel, and they had reached out to the other two schools, and then there's this correspondence going back and forth. That has just been so powerful. And I think many of you may know that I stepped into my first position out of the classroom as assistant principal, was a fifth grade teacher for the majority of my time in Portsmouth, and that is not anything that has happened in many, many years, and just has been really powerful, and I think teachers are motivated by that. And so hopefully that ongoing work will happen where we'll continue to kind of fine-tune those collaborative structures that we've put in place, also continue to look at assessments, continue to look at what's working and what's not working, fine-tuning the Essential Standards, because none of this work is just done. It will just, hopefully go from good to great, and great to greater. So I feel like, we also have had the opportunity to really grow some leaders at the same time. I think, the principals mentioned the Guided Coalition. They have really facilitated that work. I've helped to facilitate the training around that. Then they've taken a lead in the classrooms, and that work has just been outstanding. And, it's been fun to watch teachers grow in that realm as well. I guess that's all I have for you. Questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy.
Tish.
Yes, let's start with Tish.
I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Okay.
First of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just really want to voice that I appreciate the collaboration that the 3 elementary schools have in Portsmouth. We have excellent teachers, and just to know that all 3 schools are working together for the betterment of the community is just fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really amazing to watch.
Byron.
Yeah, I'm a very data-oriented person, so it doesn't bore me at all. I think it's super interesting and a great way to visualize the different aspects. And I think the way you systematically broke down the essential standards and how those things, you can see the aspects of those standards is super interesting. My only question is on the data, if this is published somewhere where we can have access to it, or if that's,
I think we can eventually... I want to make sure you.
Yeah, I mean, we've got it at the school level. We have it in our, each school has their hubs where we store all that, and probably, it wouldn't be something we would make public knowledge just because it's got, the list of children, and that would be information we wouldn't be able to. But I certainly would be more than happy to kind of, elements of that I feel like I could share with you, and kind of that process that we've gone through.
Yeah, it'd be super interesting to see, and I think with the numbers, again, it's nice to be able to see progress, and it creates a nice way to have aspirational milestones along the way. So I think, and great presentation. Thank you.
It kind of threw me off when Anthony Muhammad wasn't able to speak to you, but
I know,
I'm sorry for that.
I think I see Lee's hand up, and Lisa, were you? Did you have your hand raised? Okay, Lee?
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm excited by the collaboration as well. One of the things that I have a question about, and I come from a pretty, educational background, my parents and everything else. And so one of the things that's very important to me is creative thinking. And so how do you take a concept, and it's more of a question because I don't know how to do it, to be honest. Mm-hmm. How do you take a concept that is an essential standard and turn it into something that you end up taking the learnings from that and contextualize that into the next, I guess, essential standard?
Right, so kind of transferring all that knowledge you're getting from those essential standards. And some of that conversation, personally, I feel like a lot of that lends itself nicely to when we look into the content areas. We think about science, we think about social studies, and we think about the application of some of those essential standards and how those kind of transfer into the work of the application of collecting, for lack of a better example, I guess, collecting data and what we do with that data, whether it's when we think about our maple sugaring kind of projects that we do in third grade. I see that as a great example of how we are actually transferring some of those skills that we have identified as essential standards, whether it be writing about an informational text about that, or taking and knowing what to do with the numbers, both of which are, two essential standards that we have. And I just want to go back to Byron. One thing that I have to say, with the numbers, which was so cool, was when we looked at these sheets with teachers for the first time, kind of collectively across the district, we saw these amazing themes of very much it would be one topic within the math that every school, struggled with, so there then become all these questions that we have about that particular topic, those lessons, and then those that, were really, really strong. And so why was that? And that was part of the conversation based around that second set of data where teachers had that information to look at. And it was, I think, a great way to celebrate also the work that they had done, because they hadn't looked at it that way. And I think they had some surprises like, wow, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. Cool.
Lisa, did
Okay. Anyone else?
I was just going to say, I've said this before about the importance of strategic investments in what we're trying to accomplish. So in a bunch of what Stacy's talking about, the community, through you, with advice from us, has made a bunch of valuable investments that made this work possible that wouldn't have happened independently. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the experience of the importance of a learning opportunity for adults where they go to a conference and they sit with experts who are spending all their time thinking about this thing that we've been able to identify that as a process would help us do our jobs better. But we're bringing people to that experience. there's something special about opportunities to do that collectively together and to have an experience that then is unifying around purpose, and to work with experts. Then in some cases, we had some consultants who worked with us on the ground on some of the stuff that we were doing. Another important investment, Stacy and Stacy's role as a super important investment for the district. The fact that we have very capable educational leaders at each of our buildings, but if you think about Stacy's role as like a kind of strategic project manager almost, and is like taking some of these really key nuggets where we know we have very capable staff who are veteran people who know what they're doing, but we're able to set up work opportunities that are structured around them not having to build those opportunities themselves, but we're plugging them into well thought out, whether it's well thought out days, well thought out structures, it's following up with tracking all that data and putting it all together. Those are things that teachers can't just do on their own. So these other people that are inside of the organization that are doing the work are really essential. And I know when we get into like budget conversations, sometimes folks get into, I'm willing to pay for the people who are standing in front of a kid and giving direct instruction. But there's all these other people inside of the organization that allow us to progress and grow, get better and stronger as we go. And I never want to lose sight of that when we have these types of conversations. And Stacy was really generous and honest in saying it's not the Stacy show. This isn't all just Stacy's work, but this is work that wouldn't have been possible without Stacy in the role that she's in, being backed by you as an important investment in terms of the work we're trying to do. So I just want to thank her and thank you for that, and I want to thank the community for that type of support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Brian, and then Lee again.
Just one comment. I mean, I've been at a couple of meetings. I'm on the committee there. What's really great about this is when you think about collaboration is really important in a lot of other organizations, and it is in schools. But these teachers have their classroom. They have a process, they think about it, but it's great to be able to share it across, especially when you're onboarding a new teacher. I'm not a teacher, I don't know anything about it, but onboarding employees is really hard if there's no process. And then they have to learn from mentors, and how do they get that information, and there's no, and then it becomes this game of like, well, if you get this teacher, your kid's going to have a good right. year, and if they get that teacher, they're not going to have as good of a year, and you don't want to play those games, but this will help. I feel like this will help teachers become better. It helps the great teachers share their experiences, and then gives a consistency of that product or that service to each of the kids in a very equitable way. So I see a lot of value in this, and I'm very excited to see it go kind of stretch into the middle school and create that consistency there. So I've just been very happy with it overall, and a lot of great work that everybody obviously in the schools have been doing. So just impressive.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Lee?
I just wanted to ask another question, which is what kind of learnings did you find when you ran into the leading and trailing edges of those bell curves? Like you had the ones that you had to figure out what to do with in terms of, geez, they're not quite picking it up, or the ones that you had to figure out, geez, this one's picking up really fast, how do I extend their learning? What kind of things did you end up learning?
So when you're thinking about like those particular areas or topics where maybe the percentages were a little bit lower, is that what you're
lower
referencing?
And higher, right?
Yeah. I think that well, there are many variables that come into that, right? So I think that as teachers have been kind of getting to know the math program, I mean, certainly that was a variable that played into this, and being able to kind of look at those numbers for teachers had been through the program versus maybe some teachers that had not. And what we found that there wasn't really much of a difference. And so we also found that for the ones that they kind of struggled with, they also were particular topics. When I say topics, Envision uses the word topics versus chapters. so that they were ones that they were like not really that thrilled with and happy with, and they were particular topics that they found like they wanted to enrich or enhance or bring in other components to that to make it more developmentally appropriate or to make it more interesting or to kind of break down the lessons a little bit more. So that was something that they did. I think that with the enrichment, I mean, there has definitely been, that varies from topic to topic as well. And so when we think about intervention and we think about the enrichment and we think about those blocks of time that schools are addressing kind of those kids that have it and those kids that don't have it. So we then lean into some of that information that they get discussed in PLCs would then get transferred into some of those win blocks or intervention blocks or extra time that teachers are providing in their own classroom to address those. So they were a great way to identify where intervention needed to take place and where enrichment could be provided. That's the other piece about being in all three schools. I was just in a school the other day that there were a collection of kids that were an enrichment group that were working with the math interventionist, and they were doing some different types of problem solving that didn't necessarily happen in the program or in that topic. And then I'm always witnessing those intervention groups where, I was at New Franklin today where there's a whole group of students that are coming together with similar needs so that we can address each student for what they need versus trying to, say, here's the lesson, everybody should have it. So I think that information just really reinforced what we're doing well and why we do it.
Okay. Stacy, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Very,
Thanks,
very
Stacy.
impressive presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Zach, are you still on here?
I'm still on, I'm MC. So our next group is going to come talk to us about the PEEP program, which is a program that connected with pre-K students. We have Kristen Heath, who's the coordinator, connected with the program, and then Dr. Rick Maddie, our director of pupil support and student services. And I just wanted to say that, I think later in the agenda that we've received a notification from Rick that he won't be returning with us next year, and we'll be looking to head back towards the Keene area where he's from and where family is still at. And I just want to thank Rick for everything he's done for us for the last couple of years. This is a unbelievably challenging position to have, and Rick approaches it every day with professionalism, hard work. I look out the window, I see his windows through. I can look out my window and see his window, and I see him here at night toiling away all the time. And I think the other thing that people will tell you about Rick is that he always comes to every conversation positive, student-focused, and with a wealth of experience. So we still have Rick for a few more months, and we've got a plan to try to work on transition. But I just want to thank Rick for everything he's done for the district. And then I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate it, and thank you, Nancy, and the Portsmouth School Board for having me work here the last couple of years. I really appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to move on to talk a little bit about programming for some of our earliest learners here in the Portsmouth School District. I'm Kristen Heath. I'm the preschool coordinator here in Portsmouth. A little bit just about our model. Some people aren't familiar that we have a preschool here in Portsmouth, so we're going to share a little bit of information about it. Our Portsmouth Early Education Program, otherwise known as PEEP, is an early childhood program. So it's an inclusive environment for preschool. Lots of benefits for this. Promotes social skills, emotional regulation, positive peer interactions and relationships, peer modeling, and really supports diverse learning needs for students here in Portsmouth. So for our program, we're an early childhood program. Really what this means is that we're an inclusive program. We have, our ratios are at least 50-50 for students with and without educational disabilities. So students are learning alongside peers in a very inclusive environment. And you will notice if you come into our classrooms, this is actually one of our classrooms here. Our classes do start out smaller in the fall, and then we do add students as we transition throughout the school year. As students are turning 3 from early supports and services or identified as needing special education supports and services, they join our program throughout the school year.
And that's a 50-50 ratio on any given day. So it's not how the year starts or a 50-50 ratio throughout the week or the quarter. It's a 50-50 ratio Monday through Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about our program. Right now we have 3 preschool classrooms. We're in an amazing location located at Little Harbor School. Our classroom names are the Starfish, the Periwinkles, and the Sand Dollars. And you'll see with our new logo that each classroom has an emblem as well on there. Our classroom sizes usually are right around 12 to 16 students, and that really is dependent upon the day of the week. Our rosters will change. So we have some students attending 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. So our classroom numbers change day to day and class to class. We do also have mixed age groups in each classroom. So we have 3 to 5-year-old students, which is amazing learning opportunities as we're having a number of students transition on to kindergarten. We'll still have students maintaining with us for the following school year as really great role models in the fall for our incoming preschool students. Let's see what else. Oh, I did also want to say right now, in our PEAT program, we are currently serving 54 students. So among the 3 classrooms, which is a pretty significant number of students, we currently have 26 identified students. So with identified educational disabilities, and then we have 28 students who are non-identified or who are tuitioning into our amazing program. And we do serve an additional 5 students with special education supports and services, related services at different times. Staffing-wise, each of our classrooms is staffed with an early childhood special education teacher, so familiar with general preschool curriculum, as well as special education support services, accommodations. And then we have paraeducators in our classroom dependent upon individual student needs. And we have related service providers, so occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language pathologists, and who are providing those services based on individual student needs identified in individualized education programs.
And just really quick on the classroom structure, this is our first year in that end of Little Harbor, and the facility is really wonderful. It's very conducive to preschool, and we've also made some facility upgrades in terms of OT equipment and PT equipment. So my little plug would be to really keep that program there. It works really well with bus drop off. There's a preschool playground right outside the door, and I just can't say enough about the facility. So thank you, Ken Lynchy.
Yes, absolutely. We're definitely in an amazing location right now, which we greatly appreciate. We put up here a typical day, what our routine looks like. Our program is 8:30 to 12:30. We start and end our days on the preschool playground, which is an amazing opportunity for students to have some gross motor play, some social skills, social play with peers, but also a chance for us to meet and greet families and students as they're coming in each day and leaving each day. We have obviously morning routines, circle time. We have centers where more teacher-led activities or directed activities for students. We move into snack and then free play where all of our areas are open in each classroom. We have a closing circle. We do have lunchtime, and we have some students who access lunch through the cafeteria as well. So we access that for students. Then we end our day outside. And we have all of our students who are attending the preschool. They're receiving their special education and related services within that preschool timeframe. So they're accessing those services. Some students receive services within the classroom. Some students receive services in service provider locations like the speech language pathologist's office, occupational therapy room. And so they receive those during their typical school day with us. Some other things too I just wanted to point out before we move on is that we've added a couple of amazing things this year that we're really excited about. We have the music teacher from Little Harbor School volunteering some of her time to come down and do music classes with our preschoolers. We also have some connections with 2nd and 4th graders who are coming into our classrooms for social play with students, game play with students. but also doing some reading with them as well. We also have monthly visits with the Portsmouth Public Librarian, which has been amazing. The kids really look forward to that. And we have really been focused on outdoor education for our students this year as well. And so twice a week, all of our classrooms are going out and spending time in the thicket. And we have been working with Four Winds Nature Institute to really focus our outdoor education curriculum for students and really solidify that a little bit more. So enrollment and funding, obviously our students who are requiring special education supports and services, we're providing those at no cost for students and families. We do have some students who tuition into our program, which is amazing as well. And right now our application process is open through the end of this week. Applications are available on the school district website. And so we are accepting applications for next school year. And trying to think if there's anything else.
I think one small difference from kind of kindergarten through grade 12 is that students in preschool with disabilities start year round. So they transition in on their third birthday, regardless of what time of the year is. So if you think most students transition or they start school in September, not so much with preschool. They transition on their third birthday. So really at age 2.5, we're working on transitioning these students into our preschool. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So yes, we're receiving referrals for students who are transitioning to the Portsmouth School District from birth to 3 services on a year-round basis. And so we meet with those families, support the transition, and then have them enroll with us if that's appropriate. So impact and outcomes, I've got a lot I wanted to talk about, and I'll let you jump in as well, Rick. Sure. Positive impact, we see it with our students, we see it with our families, we see it in the community as well. We've had lots of positive support from families, which we've been really excited about. Academic, social benefits, we're seeing increased appropriate behaviors for students to get their needs met, positive social emotional skills, academic readiness skills, lots of positives there. And as we collect that information through a variety of ways. One would be for our identified students. We collect it through looking at their IEP goal progress reports, data collection related to IEPs. We also do what's called the Preschool Outcome Measurement System, or otherwise known as POMS, which is a requirement through the state of New Hampshire. And for that, we use, it's called the DRDP, it's Desired Results Developmental Profile. So we do that assessment with all of our identified students. We're required to gather entry and exit data to report to the state, which is then reported to federal government in regards to outcomes that students have made while receiving services. And right now we're working on collaborating together across the classrooms for the creation of a progress report that's going home to our families who are tuitioning in as well, and so that should be rolling out hopefully at the end of the school year. And then one of the things that I wanted to touch on, and you can as well, we just went through and are still kind of in the tail end of going through what's called the PAGS process. So program approval and general supervision for special education, and we're obviously part of that with the special education supports and services for our youngest learners here. We had some amazing outcomes, I would say, for the preschool. So our IEPs were reviewed, our evaluations, service logs, all of that information, and the state came back with no findings for the preschools. That was amazing. Indicator 12, so there's actually quite a few indicators that are consistent just with the preschool age group where we're collecting data and reporting out. Indicator 12 talks about our appropriate and timely transitions for students transitioning from early supports and services to preschool special education. And we were meeting all of those timelines in an appropriate way, which is excellent. So we're supporting those families when they're transitioning in from 2.5 to 3 and making sure that those supports and services are in place for families. And then one of the other indicators, indicator 7, is related to the Preschool Outcome Measurement System, or POMS. And the New Hampshire Department of Education previously allowed school districts to choose from 3 evaluation tools or assessment tools. And then they slimmed it down to just 2 options that you could have to choose from. We were allowed to choose from TS Gold or APSI, so 2 different tools. Portsmouth School District chose to use TS Gold, or Teaching Strategies Gold. And then a new tool, DRDP, which I already talked about, started to come out as an option for pilot testing. So Portsmouth School District, we decided to be a pilot tester for the state for that tool. We did that along with TS Gold for a year. And then last year we chose to shift over to only using DRDP because it was pretty clear that the state of New Hampshire was going to move to only allowing districts to utilize one tool in the future, which has officially happened for this school year. So we moved over a year early, which was great, but we're seeing some discrepancies in the data that's coming between TS Gold and DRDP. So we're working with the state of New Hampshire to clarify some of that, but they're well aware that some of those are coming up through Indicator 7 with the preschool outcome measurement system. So, because unfortunately we're comparing apples to oranges with two different assessment tools for that. But I think that's all I had for.
Yeah. So my biggest takeaways there are the biggest takeaway for me is that it's data driven. So the development of our preschoolers are, measured and data driven and closely monitored. And also we were really, a good district in piloting the new measurement program. I think that has been really beneficial for us. And the last thing is the PAGS process was a program approval and general supervision process from preschool through grade 12. So the fact that the preschool had no findings on their IEP is very remarkable. That just speaks to very excellent work. There's a 72-point checklist that the State Department reviews in relation to our preschool IEPs. And again, there were no findings in that area. So I just want to highlight the remarkable nature of that. So thank you.
All right, conclusions and next steps. So this is I've only been in this position as preschool special education coordinator for a few years, but we've made lots of changes and progress in certain areas. We've really worked to increase the presence of our preschool program so that people are aware of our PEEP program. We have created a new logo this year, so you'll find it on the school district website. And on the website, we've got our own section for school, which is exciting. That's new this year. We are now on Facebook and Instagram as well, through the Portsmouth School District, so follow us. Our new space, as Dr. Maddie was saying, is amazing. So last year we were located in Little Harbor School, but if you ever came to visit us, we were on one side of the school building and had to transition all of our 3 to 5 year olds to the other side, to the playground, multiple times a day. You would have also noticed that we didn't have bathrooms within our classrooms. This year in our new space, come and visit us. It's amazing. We're over on the other side. We're very accessible to the playground. We have bathrooms in each of our classrooms. We're in close proximity to our related service provider locations. So we are very excited with what Kenny's team has done over the summer, and we are just really excited to be in this new space. We've got lots of increased collaboration and planning going on with our team. Again, Four Winds Nature Institute, we're working a lot on the outdoor education piece. We've had a lot of families that supported us earlier in the winter with starting to increase our rain gear and our boots and all of that so that our students can go outside in all sorts of weather. Lots of parent support that we've been really excited about. And then we also just recently received a Clipper grant. So we're excited to be able to utilize that for some additional planning related to the outdoor learning. Next steps, we're going to continue to enhance the quality and access to programming that we have in Portsmouth. But I would say come and visit us. You can usually find me on the preschool playground in one of the classrooms over there. So very excited to be where we are.
Thank you, Kristen and Rick. That was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Gave us good insight into how PEEP operates. Byron.
Yeah, a couple questions. First, I'm super biased because my 4-year-old is there, and he's having a wonderful year, so thank you very much.
Absolutely.
But first question was, what does the application versus enrollment look like in terms of number of applications coming in, the space that's available?
So what we do is primarily we offer parents who are interested in continuing for the following year. And so first we offer to families that are currently enrolled, see if they're interested in continuing, which we've had 100% of families that were interested in continuing. And so then we look at, based on our students who are transitioning to kindergarten in one of the elementary schools, how many spots we have open. We've had quite a few applications come in, but we've also had quite a few that are 2-day-a-week applications. So we're able to kind of share spots for particular students. So I haven't looked recently. We might have 1 or 2 maybe still opening moving into the fall, but we're hoping to have all of our tuition spaces full before we start in the beginning.
And then following on that, do you see the trajectory such that there would need to be an expansion in sort of the size of the overall program? Yeah.
I would say not at this point and not in the near future. So we recently did do an expansion with adding the 3rd classroom. We did previously have 2 classrooms, and one was in previous years more of a special education program, so the ratios were different. So that kind of shifts our ability to have more students in each of the classrooms as well. But we were able to add that 3rd classroom on, which offered additional options for students. And so we found this year that we're in a good space for the number of students we have transitioning in. I receive a list of expected numbers for early sports and services students who are going to be transitioning in, and it seems like we're in a really great space right now for the student needs that we have in the future.
Thank you.
And this is the first year of that 3rd classroom, and it's been really successful, so thank you for that.
Lee.
I just want to say, number 1, thank you. Number 2, I think that one of the biggest benefits actually is having you, Kristen, as a part of that program.
Thank you.
It's been light years different than 3 years ago when our family actually went from early sports and services and into that program. Night and day. And Kenny, really thank you for that space, because that space is absolutely amazing now. Really is. So I just have nothing but positive things to say about the P program.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Zach, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Lee kind of stole my thunder. I mean, as well, to some extent, which is great, which is perfect. I'm glad you did. One of the things I have been saying to administrators is I hate to coordinators and everybody. It's a big deal for them to come out at night and to be at this and be here for a while. I also find that they are our best advocates for the work that we're doing. You have an opportunity to see highly trained, very intelligent people, very thoughtful about the work that they're doing. And that was true in Stacy's comments, and, having ever talked about Rick, but, I do agree that Kristen's contributions, and it's our whole team, and she'd be the first one to say that, but what we've done in terms of kind of the professionalism of what we're doing, the specificity of kind of thoughtfulness of what's happening, but there's also like a renewed kind of spirit de corps as part of that program that you can very much take a thread back to when Kristen stepped onto the scene. So we're really lucky to have her and her whole team as part of the program, and I'm really excited about what comes next, and I'm still hoping to get some Pete gear maybe at some point, with new logos and stuff. But
Very
yeah,
pretty. We're looking forward to it. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to thank her for her contributions, and again, I think the more you're able to see some of our folks and engage some of our folks, you also realize the depth of complexity of all these programs and how much people understand and know, and how much training they've done, how much experience they have to take what are really very complex systems with, in this case, very complex students, and be responding to the state, be responding to specific student needs, doing enrollment, all these different pieces that are happening simultaneously. That only comes with skillful folks that we have working for us. So thank you to Kristen and her team, and thank you and the community for continuing to invest in our people.
Absolutely.
I think, Matt, did you have a comment?
Just if I may, curious, so we have a preschool program in Rye that's just sort of getting going, and I'm curious what your tuition rate is and how you determined that rate.
So that's an amazing question. That's actually something that we look at, and I've gone through the process with other districts as well when I was a preschool special education coordinator. Our rate right now is very, I would say very minimal in comparison to some, but right now for a 2-day-a-week placement, it's $200 a month. For a 4-day-a-week placement, it's $400 a month. So we try and make sure that it's achievable for families, so that when families are applying, we can make sure that to accept their students to join our program. We do have financial assistance available as well if needed. So we try and make sure that there aren't barriers for our earliest learners to be able to attend with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? I just have a question. Do we take the identified students from outside of Portsmouth, or is that just for Portsmouth students?
Just Portsmouth students. Yep.
But the other students can come from other communities?
So right now we just have Portsmouth.
Okay. Oh, okay. Do
Portsmouth
we have a
students.
wait list at all, especially for the identified students?
We cannot have a wait list for our identified students. So the way we plan our classrooms is to make sure we have enough space to meet their needs. Regardless of when they're turning 3, when they're identified, we make sure that we can meet their needs. For tuitioned-in students, we have had a wait list at times this year, but we've had some students move, different things that we've been able to have other students kind of join us throughout the year.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you
so much.
Very, very
Appreciate it.
interesting presentation. Thank you. Okay, what's next? I think I'll find, oh, go ahead, Zach.
No, I
You're
think
still
we're
on.
going to move into superintendent's report. We did the memo is listed under me. It's a collaborative effort, though, from a variety of folks. We tried to go back through one more time and identify what we thought were kind of like hanging threads connected to kind of the conclusion of our budget conversations, and make sure that we spoke to those things we felt like you might want us to tie up a little bit. So I'm happy to answer any questions connected with those things. I will also say that I think we're moving in a direction where we're going to try to do in the future more written things like this, so we can preload and then speak to those specifics that you might want to drill down on a little bit in the future. And I hope that this is a format that's helpful for folks.
Okay, are there any questions for Zach? Yes, Tish?
Yeah, I've got a few. So I did have an opportunity to read this today, and specifically, a couple questions I have is in regards to the special education reconstructing at the high school. I want to know like what the difference is. Granted, I read it, and it looks like that we're physically moving the placement of the special ed to a group setting, it seems like, so that we have the 9 and 10 grade together, 11th and 12th grade together. Where is this going to happen? Like, is it one classroom, 2 classrooms? What does that look like?
So I know some of this as the kind of theoretical part of how people wanted to redesign the services has kind of come together. I think there's still an ongoing conversation about location, and Steve's here, so
Yeah,
I'll let Steve
perfect.
speak to it, because I think he can do a more robust job than me. I did sit in on the last meeting, but
Yeah, so as Zach was just saying, the pedagogical approach is where the work has been. So currently, all of our study centers, as they're called, are scattered across the building. So they're classrooms like any other classroom. And that's essentially what we're going to still try to maintain, while at least bringing some of the services together.
Okay.
But also making sure that they're distributed across the building. So we have a few locations identified that would still maintain the fluidity of a student's day, moving in and out of.
So all the students aren't going to be like in one place,
No.
but okay.
Yep.
Multiple. Thank you for that.
spots, yeah.
Like I said, I have several questions on this.
Yeah.
With this new program, is there going to be like a dedicated paraprofessional in each, or is it the paraprofessionals going to be like they are now, going to classrooms?
Yep, assigned in that space assigned to students based on the IEPs, yeah.
And do we have enough paraeducators for this program?
We don't have enough now.
I guess that was my point.
Yeah. It doesn't change how we serve students currently in this new model. The idea is to kind of generate and identify those needs. So the difference between serving students to build skills in 9 and 10 are very different than the skills that we serve 11, 12. So that's where this pedagogical drive is coming from. So when you have a mixed group class with seniors and freshmen with radically different skill needs or support needs, it makes our ability to show growth or really deliver on that much more complicated.
Okay. Now, is this restructuring based on another program that you witnessed elsewhere? Is it based on another program in another school system? Or?
Multiple, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I just want to address this particular topic as it was embedded in our explanation of a whole suite of service changes that we're addressing to provide. So I just want to contextualize it. The deep dive on this design change, we can prepare a presentation more thoroughly. So I just want to name that up front as we get in, because the information was embedded in talking about a bigger collective like our Clipper Learning Center for credit recovery and interventions. And it's like a multi-tiered system of support that's been around for 20 years, but we need to kind of start leaning in.
Okay, just kind of honing in on it a little bit
Yeah,
more.
so the service models around grade level supports are fairly standard approaches for special ed and student services.
Okay.
And I was just going to say, I know as the special ed team was finishing up their conversation about this and kind of coming to some conclusions, we were just getting I was a visitor, just getting to a dialogue about next steps. And one of the most essential next steps was, how are we communicating this out to multiple different audiences?
Yeah.
What's the internal kind of conversation going to look like with staff and helping staff understand this? And then what does that conversation look like with parents? So that's still, like, we were just having that dialogue.
This is
some of this slipped in here because we wanted to be able to respond to what was happening in counseling and create some context. But this is really not the kind of official rollout.
No,
in the real
Still an
communicating that
ongoing
we want to go
conversation.
to. I think most of the core things a lot of the core is locked down, but it's still some final details, and then really making sure we're having these conversations with these different audiences about what this is going to be.
And this has been a year-long conversation in that department. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we go much further with the questions, could one of you just summarize the changes? Because I found it hard embedded in this document to kind of understand that, and I don't think the public is.
Well, again, this was in this document specifically to talk about how we've developed school-wide systems and changes for student service support, both emotional, academic, social. So the student service department at Portsmouth High School has for a year talked about a new service model. So currently in our study centers with students with IEPs and with students without IEPs, go to a case manager, have a case manager to support their IEPs. They're in a mixed level block of time, so one of our blocks in the day. What we've discovered is, how do we dedicate our kind of curriculum when you have 4 different grades represented in one block with very different needs, of course. So this move is the beginning of us addressing some of those needs in a much more systematized way. Yeah, so that's the quick summary. But again, this was never meant to be this time to present this. We included that to let the board know, especially that when we look at the wonderfully diverse needs of all of our students, we needed to start, and it started with our support center. Now, support center was created many, many years ago, and that was using space and time for students, mostly with 504 accommodation plans, but also just kids that we've identified internally as needing some extra supports. About a year ago, we decided that, I'll own it, I decided that I really needed to understand how support was being delivered from an executive functioning level, how we were really meeting 504s in robust ways. And we decided to bring a whole team together, counselors, tutors, paras, educators, and really get down to understanding what that support model looked like. And from those changes, which have been wildly successful, we decided to start thinking about credit recovery, interventions, and transition plans. And those are areas that we didn't actually have a lot of documentation on. We have wonderful services, but in terms of systematizing them and making sure that they're calibrated and aligned and working with everybody we know at the middle school and the good work at the elementary schools. So this was a part of that rigorous and aligned curriculum. Student services could not be left out of that. It's really easy to think about a English K-12 curriculum map. But when we talk about student services and personalized services for students, wherever they are and whatever those needs are, infinitely more complex task. So that explanation and that part of the memo is really just to talk about we're bringing a lot of these new services together.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, my background, I have a history in special education, so it's near and dear to my heart. So that's why I honed in on this.
No, of course.
So no, thank you. I appreciate it, and I look forward to further reporting.
Yeah, as we really lean
that.
into that.
I do want to try to understand, we got a lot of feedback from students specifically about the support center and fear of losing that. So what is the plan it sounds like your plan is to
maintain the support center.
Maintain it.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And everything
I'll be really honest, we're trying to figure out students think is going away. We got a bunch of like really great, positive, unusual chunk of these like great positive things about the support center, and I was trying to figure out, do students think this is going away? Like what's going on here? What is this
think
wave?
it was going away.
No,
So
not at all.
Not at all. It's really I started this work 2 years ago specifically for the support center because I'll be really honest and bold. I asked for the curriculum, and it wasn't there. I asked for activities and executive functioning, wasn't there. Not that people weren't doing great work. That's not what I'm saying. They were doing great work. We did not have the curriculum for a support program in place. So the team started working and everyone got together. We did surveys of parents, of students, of teachers who recommend kids, like the whole system. And that we have that in a presentation anytime you want to see that. And we learned a ton. We learned about really what it meant to develop curriculum around executive functioning when it was named as an accommodation in a 504. What does that 10-minute activity look like? What do we do for kids in a 78-minute block? So with that, we brought teams together. We assigned some counselors to drop in. We have faculty. Our curriculum coordinator would go in and teach lessons. We all took turns supporting Brian Ryan, our special ed coordinator. And what we did was we really designed a program of study. And this was the team's design. It was really amazing to have the folks come together and build this out. So from that, we learned immediately, almost by December, we realized, okay, this is what we all imagined could happen when we really started dedicating to develop curriculum in a really robust way. So from that team, a larger faculty team came together. And they started exploring schools. Winnicott came to us. We went to Winnicott. We went to Rochester. We went to Exeter. We went to a whole bunch of schools. And they came back and reported out things they learned about what support centers are and are not, separate from IEP and separate from student services. So I just want to make that line clear because we knew we have about 80 students with 504s, and we wanted to make sure we understood what we could do to improve those services. So from that, this idea of the Clipper Learning Center was kind of born out of everything we learned from the leadership of the faculty and staff in the support center. And it was remarkable. And so knowing that we have students in transition, and transition could be medical, could be just move into the district, any number of other issues where we have to help kids adjust, throwing kids right into 1,000 students and 4 big blocks a day, they need other supports to navigate those transitions sometimes. Credit recovery, we've been working on this by redesigning our summer school as well. That started last year. And then interventions, before a kid gets to the point where they have to recover a credit, what can we do better? How can we serve kids in the moment fluidly? And that's the birth of the Clipper Learning Center. The support center's model is actually at the center of it. knowing that we also have VLAX, which is like enrichment and acceleration. So all of these things were happening without oversight, essentially. I mean, lots of people paid attention, but we never organized them in a new, robust way.
I was just going to say, what would be helpful, would we eventually present it, is because I know the stuff and I've seen the visuals are helpful. And so recently, Shea St. Laurent and Jackie Chisholm, who part of the curriculum office, did a presentation for academic department heads on kind of, here's what this looks like to start to introduce it to staff. And it was really helpful, me knowing everything that was part of that presentation, and you said all the words, but actually having visuals to be like, here's these chunked out things, and this thing does this, and this thing does that, and here are the kids who are addressing here. I think it's super helpful. So I think when we have the opportunities in the near future to do a more robust presentation that there's already elements of, I think it's going to be really helpful to kind of suss it out and understand it, because even me kind of having seen that and all the same words being spoken right now, the visual would help.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lisa?
I had two questions and a comment. I'm really happy to hear that the support center is going, because I mean, separate from the kids emailing in, like I've heard from kids before, that's a really beneficial program, and it sounds like it's helping a lot of kids who don't necessarily get identified for special education to still get the boost up and the attention that they need when they need it. So I'm psyched that is still part of the plan. One of my questions is, I'm just a little curious about the 9th grade transition counseling, asking for a friend because I have an 8th grader, but I think in talking to a lot of parents and a lot of kids, like that seems like it's a really challenging pivot in so many ways. So is the idea that counselor would start with the kids while they're still in middle school and then stay with them? Or is it more like once they arrive in your building, that will be, I'm just trying to understand how it's different from they have a 9th grade counselor right now, basically.
Yes, it really is about the transition months. It's about December through September and on. Yes. So as you know now, our senior counselor does the rotation and has to then balance the guiding out your seniors and welcoming in your 8th graders. So,
all right. So Lisa knows, but wait, explain that for people who put that.
So we have 4 counselors in the counseling office that are assigned by grade level, and they stay with the students for 4 years. And what that rotation has created is the senior counselor, when they've now 4 years with their crew, is both shepherding them out through graduation and beyond, and at the same time onboarding 8th graders with 8th grade visits and the middle schools and going to the, so that juggle becomes complex, and people have pitched in and everyone's helping, and it's been an amazing opportunity to both watch and learn and make changes. And it's also, as a counselor with students, for 4 years, oh wait, what happens in 8th grade again, right? That was 4 years ago, and things change a lot. So this idea came from the department itself. So, met with the department heads to really talk about, ideas when obviously the retirement and changes and what are we going to do. And so this idea ultimately came from the department itself that said, looking at the resources we have and making sure we can maintain that level of service, knowing that a dedicated transition 9th grade counselor would be the responsible one, connecting with 8th grade teachers, 8th grade parents, presentations, along with the curriculum office, but handling that critical December through, and then staying with the students that whole first year, and then moving on. So that's how that specifically came about.
That sounds really cool.
It's similar on the other side to our college counselor and our career coordinator, 2 people that are really dedicated to our junior senior process. So knowing that we have these resources that are already by function servicing those students at that level, it was interesting to say that we didn't have the same level, at 9th grade. So we thought, that's an area, and the team itself, the counseling team, this was their design, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Like I can see how that would make it easier for families and kids. I'll be curious to see how that.
Yeah.
And my other question is maybe a dumb question, but I'm wondering, as we switch to more enrichment in the summer, are we pivoting completely away from the Clipper Academy classes that kids could do for enrichment and for credit in the summer that weren't credit recovery? You know, like we had
There's
some
still
really
enrichment
cool,
courses.
but they're shorter and they're not for credit anymore.
So that's a departmental decision when it comes down to, you know, when you take a course, whether it's enrichment or advancement. So can I take a summer course and not have to take it during the school year? So that's the question ultimately in a kind of a programmatic design. But there are enrichment courses, there are credit recovery courses in all the core subject areas. So, and that was about really targeting the most, you know, the kids that needed us the most. And it's in constant, we just made the change last year, and our goal is to continue to review and study and figure out what's going to help our kiddos the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone?
I have a question
Yes.
regarding the budget process.
But not the high school.
But not the high school.
Any
No.
other high school questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, thank you, Steve. Yes, Tish, go ahead.
So I really appreciate the work done to be more proactive with the budget. I did notice that in the summer, the school board gets involved with this new schedule of the budget summary, but it doesn't seem that the board is involved again until January. What I'm wondering is the finance committee that's being proposed this evening. Is that going to, the board members that are on that committee, will they be part of the process of not just meeting quarterly, but meeting with the smaller groups, the admins from the schools and things like that? So they're part of the process all the way through.
So we haven't, as we've been talking about it, we haven't been talking about, like as we sit and talk, at the moment, we haven't conceptualized it in a way where, like when we go through kind of our budget season, when we go through the part where like cost area people are coming in and they're saying, this is what I think I need, here's why, that type of work. We hadn't at this point conceptualized that was going to be people on this, like these two board members sitting at every single one of those meetings. We were talking about how to, in the course of that process, how are we doing check-ins with those folks as we go? It's an interesting idea to contemplate. I just say at this point, we hadn't contemplated it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'm done with my questions.
Okay, anyone else?
I have a budget question too. So, in your memo, you notified us that the the city manager will be using the 2.89 proposal. So, by option one, are you referring to the very first option that we had on the
So
table,
the
or
last,
option one of the
I would say
most
when I'm talking
recent?
about option one, I'm talking about that 3 frames document, the 25 pages or whatever. And in that, there was like a 1, 2, and 3. 1 was the one was the least spending. 2 was the most, and 3 was, it's not Goldilocks, it's not just right, but it's like, but that was kind of the breakdown. So 1 included we had all those folks that were involved in the early retirements. I think I listed in here, yes. So this would still include some of those positions being hired back that we saw as essential and we couldn't do without. So even in that option 1, it includes it includes posting and hiring those positions right away.
Okay.
Go ahead. So I was going to say, then through the process, I mean, our intent is to do whatever we can to advocate for the rest of what the board thinks was appropriate, which was the last of those options, option 3, which is the 3.87. And so that'll be the work, and I think over the next couple of months. So and I mentioned this here. So in the manager's packet, we have a summary. Every department has a page. So we go from our big binder down to small section for us, we have the opportunity to identify the things that will appear in the manager's budget, the things that were left out, and then we'll also be on the narrative, which is not a huge section. We also are being offered the opportunity, which hasn't been done in years, for us to have a table that's like, here's the school board, here's the manager on things. So I think I think there's some. It doesn't sound like huge, but there is some give in terms of what the city process is trying to include. And then I think we have to do a good job of talking about why we believe that these are investments that are worth making, despite the concerns around kind of fiscal strains that the city council is worried about overall. I think we have a good case to make around those things, and I think we have to be strategic about how we approach it.
Okay. So my question is, I'm glad to hear that you're still going to be doing that advocacy to get us to where we need it to be, because what's confusing to me is that as a board, we voted to present option 3, I think it was.
It was actually two.
I don't remember the
Two.
names. Okay.
It was actually
Option
two, but the most
Um,
robust of the 3 options we talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then you said you're presenting option 1. So
No, I'm not presenting option 1. So in
But
the
how
book,
did option 1 get to them?
so the book goes,
Because we voted
took-
to give them option 2.
So they make, anytime we go through this process, they look at what, even in previous years, Brian's, I think, has articulated this well, that we come to a decision about what we think the proper level of investment is and what the positions are and the things are that support that level of investment. Very often, then, as soon as we're done, I go in, same thing with the other charter departments, police, fire, the other departments who are not chartered, who don't have boards they answer to, have already gone in and had their conversations with the manager. Then we go in and say, hey, look, this is what the police commission had to say, or this fire commission, school board. And very often what those conversations are from the manager position is like, look, I'm creating a proposal that reflects what I think is necessary for the city going forward. I've talked to the council. I think I have an idea about financially where it needs to be. Here's if I can only give you blank amount of money, what is the highest priority for you to do? And so that we have those conversations. Some of those things get included, some of those don't. We try to make some additional reductions, like if you forced us to do this, this is what it would look like. And then we move ahead. So what happens here is, because we weren't done and they were moving on, they looked at our stuff and said, okay, of these 3 things, this 2.89 thing fits within our needs overall for what we're going to do. So that's what we're plugging into the binder, is that we are recommending that you spend 2.89, the option 1 version. And that's what we're going to present as the city manager's proposal to the council for what would be allocated to the schools. So,
But that's not what we voted for.
correct.
So why are we presenting something that's not what we voted for?
So we're not presenting anything. The city manager is presenting, so the city manager is presenting what she believes the city budget should be. She's not obligated to present, she's not obligated in her budget to present what comes from us, from the fire commission, from the police commission. She comes to her own conclusion about this is what those entities would like. Here's what I think we're willing to do from my perspective, from her perspective, in relation to that. And then we go into, this conversation with city council, where, their primary employee is the city manager. So it can be challenging. Here's the city manager is their primary employee. And then depending on what the leads of myself, the police chief, fire chief, are trying to advocate for, we're in the process of a process that is fundamentally designed for the city manager to present to the city council what she believes it should be, and then we're working on the sides of that. So we have opportunities to present and talk, but the document that they're given from the manager is the manager's proposed budget, not
Right.
our proposed budget.
I understand that. So at
Okay.
some point, you're going to present them with our.
Yes. So as part of my presentation of stuff, it would say, I appreciate what the manager has already said she's supportive of. here's the rest of what the school board feels is appropriate to drive forward what we need to do in the next year. And how we want to take advantage of the fact that we went out and went through a process to generate some staff turnover that would allow us to make strategic investments. And we like to take advantage of that opportunity. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's have Byron and then Tish.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, maybe this goes without saying, but the job I think that I see us having at this point is convincing the council to amend the city manager's budget up to the level that we think is appropriate. Because the city manager, as it's said now, is going to come and suggest 2.89, which is not what we voted for.
Right. I
That's
think that's
an
exactly right.
excellent way to say
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Who's next? Tish.
So ignore me because Byron kind of said what I was going to say. So.
There we go.
And I mean, I would just like to add, this is the important time for us to get the community to come out and speak for us. And I know Brian has some contacts that he wants to make, but anybody that can come out and speak on our behalf, and I think we certainly can get parents and community members to come and speak. I believe they get the budget at the end of April. The city council doesn't get the budget till the end of April. So and we can send this all to you, but the meetings are April 21st, city council meetings, May 15th, May 19th, June 9th, and June 23rd. They have to vote on it by the end of June. So.
And typically the first week in June is usually when they wrap up.
okay.
Usually, because they know if they get to the tail end, if they can't come to a vote at the end of June, the manager's budget officially becomes the city budget, regardless of them.
And
So
I don't recall that
usually,
ever
I don't think that's ever.
happening.
I've never heard that
I don't
happened.
recall that.
I would also say one thing that's changed just in terms of process this year, and I wish I had the dates in front of me. I don't, and I trust that those are probably all the dates. We've done a day-long. I can't remember how they refer to it. We all go to the library, and it's just like morning through evening presentation where every department heads up there and talking. We're not doing that this time around. It's going to be broken up into chunks. I think we might be on the first night. I'm trying to remember. I got to look back. I have it all. We will be there and ready to go, but I just don't have it in front of me right now.
So stay tuned, because we'll let you all know when it's important for the public to come out and speak on our behalf. So, yes.
Yeah, I just want to back that up by saying, we talked earlier in the evening around some of the federal pushes that we're seeing. And I think if you take that and you couple with potential changes at the state level relative to education spending, I think it's extremely important that we continue to maintain levels, if not to only maintain services, but also as a buffer for potential downstream changes. I know that there have been counselors publicly talking about, standing up to the federal pressures, and I hope that those counselors are willing to, back up the school board in their budget as part of that.
I think Lisa is very well knowledgeable about the statewide property tax that might be coming back, so.
I feel like might would be an optimistic perspective on that at this point, but I could become pleasantly surprised by the outcome in Concord.
Maybe I was generous in that.
I think it's never a done deal until it's done, but the expectation right now is that the excess tax revenue from Portsmouth may go to the state to be redistributed to some other communities around the state that have a lower tax base and have more challenges funding their schools with their local tax base, would be the way that they look at it. So it presents a challenge for us after reassessments and all the other things going on to try to have enough revenue to run our schools locally in the same way that we have.
I was just going to say, too, as we think about what Byron was saying, as some of the people who have come up tonight and spoke and in previous sessions have spoke, these are all, again, going back to investments, these are all strategic investments that are not it's not some of the classic things that people can very easily be like, yes, identified teacher in front of kids teaching, but the type of work that's being done to kind of focus and revitalize some of the programs that we're doing for kids. And in some levels, we're talking about universal stuff, like similar to what Stacy was talking about. In other situations, it's having people who can work through the program. Steve's talking about we're being very nuanced about how we're identifying students in need and then redesigning the systems we have to better reflect the reality we see on the ground. But we have to have people involved in those fights, you know, and in those conversations all the time. And so there are things that are part of what we're talking about in the budget you guys adopted that are absolutely fundamental to move forward those 5-year goals that are part of the strategic plan. They're not like nice. They're like, if you want to do this work, we need some of these people on the ground to be doing the work. Otherwise, we will struggle to hit some of the goals that we've laid out that we think are essential in terms of hitting what we want for student outcomes. So.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Can we move on? Zach, school board email summary.
Yep. And you
We
just have,
that.
as usual, you have the summary available to you around the variety of different things that people have reached out about, all things that the school board has received, and this is representative of that period of time. You also then, moving on from that, I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation for PEEP, that we have the letter of resignation from Dr. Maddie as he moves on to other things, and want to make you aware of that resignation. And then it's Brian. I'm happy to pass the torch.
Hey, Zach?
Yes.
I just have one quick question about the email correspondence.
Yes.
I'm guessing that the email that we got around students giving their address might have been related to Student Government Day. But I couldn't tell because I was there and all the kids were told not to give their address when they spoke.
I don't think it was Student Government Day. I think that was in relation
from
to.
another
I think it was
situation?
in relation to our last board meeting, maybe, and we had a student present.
okay.
So we're still trying to figure that one out.
Because I believe we have an option for them not to give their address
And I think
when
in
they're
the
under
future, it's a good
18.
one for us to think about is when if we have students who come to speak, just having them, you know, say I'm so and so and I go to Portsmouth High,
Yeah.
type of thing, and that could be enough for us. But it was a good insight.
Fair.
So, and we're still trying to figure that one out.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
thank
that was
you.
the public comment.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't. So just we haven't pulled that. We haven't pulled that out yet. But we're still trying to see what we can do without eliminating that whole piece of the video footage. So.
Okay, Brian?
Yep. You'll see in your backup, you have a memo in regards to the Finance Committee. There's been a request to utilize the Finance Committee, which I think is a great thing. My understanding is that the board's already basically started the process of having a Finance Committee, and we have 2 people that are already on it, if I'm not mistaken. So, which is great. So that's half the battle right there. But Finance Committees it's a very good thing to have, I think, because I've utilized them in the past in other districts that I've worked in, but I've also been on them in districts that I've served on the board for. I actually chaired the one at Oyster River before I finished up my time there. But they are valuable year-round, but they're most valuable during the budget season. I know that was a topic that we just brought up, where you can actually save yourself hours upon hours of discussion at the board level when you get a finance committee to get through the weeds of everything and get through the meat and potatoes of the budget. And I've always used them to do exactly what Zach did, which is give 3 options to look at. And then you can, the process usually works, hey, there's 3 options, which ones do you like? You kind of zero in on one, then you start doing a little bit of horse trading of, hey, let's add this, take out that, let's swap this around. But you can get to that point a lot quicker when you have a finance committee and utilize them properly. So I like to get this committee together and kind of get them to, I could go over a lot of stuff with them. I don't want a data overload, but at least get them through up to speed on processes and how we operate and how a budget comes together, how my reports come together. We could utilize them to say, hey, let's change these reports up to be a little more user-friendly or what have you. So I'm kind of plagiarizing old reports right now until we kind of find something we're comfortable with. But there's a lot of functions that they can do that I've listed here. Obviously, the big one is assisting in creating the annual budget. Reviews and recommends budget proposals to the board. We monitor ongoing spending. I would figure at least every quarter we get together. I would take a deep dive into the numbers and show you where it's going, where it's been, what we're looking at as we get close to the end of the year. I mean, we're at April now, and I'm already preparing for the end of the year. I've been preparing for at least a month on that. Any capital planning things that we're bringing up, you'd probably be a part of. But important too is policy recommendations. There's a lot of financial policies that we either rely on the city on, or we should have more detail at the school level with school policies. We have some financial policies. All the D policies are financial, but I think there's some more that we probably could utilize to make us more efficient and more accountable as well. So that's kind of my pitch. I'd like to, at least maybe in the next month, get together and kind of start that process to, I believe it's Kerry and Byron are you guys on the committee?
You're on
I
it.
don't remember.
So,
I think it is.
well, surprise.
It's definitely in our report of our committees, but.
That's what I thought, but I didn't see it. Yeah, I'm expecting.
So I'd like to either get to, figure out between the three of us what works best for a schedule and work that out and try to get together. So it's something that kind of changes over time as well, where, you start seeing your function being a little bit going this direction, a little bit in that direction. You kind of, water seeks its own level. So I'm more than happy to sit down and kind of dig deep and get into some numbers if you'd like, and kind of explain how things come to be and why we make decisions that we make. It's good.
Thank you. Brian, I think Lisa has a question.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to hear that this is going to be getting off the ground in a more substantial way, because I definitely felt like during our budget process, there were a lot of moments where people had different questions about why are we presenting it this way, or why are we talking about it in this way and not that way, and having that happen at the committee level throughout the year definitely feels like it could make our budget conversations much more productive and clear for everybody. What I cannot remember, though, is when we established this committee, what was the mandate of the committee? Because I see a lot of things here that, based on my very dim recollection, were not kind of what we talked about when we discussed the committee. So it's not so much that I'm opposed to it, but that I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about the mandate, because I wouldn't want to get into January where the committee's been going in one direction, thinking our mandate is to do all of these things, and then there's some people on the board that think, oh, we thought they were doing these other things. So that's the one piece that I guess I'm curious about, because this is definitely a bigger conversation.
These
than
are
we
only,
had.
I actually took this from my experience, and I'm not saying this is how it has to function.
Oh, and I'm not saying
And
it's
I'm more than
bad, I
happy
just
to
wondered.
go, to look back and see what the charge is for this committee. I'm willing to do that. I just thought I would
Yeah.
add a little extra, kind of see exactly what it involves before people start, jumping feet first into the school finance committee.
Would it be reasonable if the committee maybe met once and then came back to the board and says, based on our conversation, like, this is what we think? Just to have that touch point before you get so deep in the weeds that we're just not.
It's your committee. You
I don't
can
know.
do whatever you
Well,
like. So.
I don't know. I don't know what other people think, but I guess I would like to understand the mandate more at the front end of the work than like a year from now, I guess. I don't know if I'm asking that the right way, but.
You can do whatever you like.
I think, so if we have, and I'm trying to remember to what extent, I'm trying to remember back in time, we had a charge. I think we were trying to get into, when we developed committees in the past, having a written charge.
Yeah.
And we will dig back to determine if there was one that was developed, and if not, we can come back with a proposal for what that could look like.
I think
But
that would
could be
be.
very
If it wasn't
alterable.
one, we need to vote on it, I think, don't we?
Yeah.
It should already exist somewhere, but anyways, we'll double check and see. And we would not go rogue. It's your committee. So if we have an old charge, we bring it back for you to take a peek at. And if we discover that we don't know if there is a modernish looking charge, we're happy to work with people around what that could look like.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I think it would be really great to have a lot of this work down in the weeds happen more in the committee setting, so
Agreed.
that we can maybe have a more productive conversation. But I don't recall when we were setting up the committee that we were going to have a lot of the budget decisions happen at the committee level. So I just want to make sure the communication channels between that committee and the entire board in terms of what's happening with the budget hearings.
And the intent is not budget decisions. The intent is just to take the information, whittle it down, and report back to the board.
Yeah, that's
to
fair.
say, hey, kind of like, almost like in a summary form, hey, we went through this project, rather than having this hour-long conversation, you can have a 5-minute explanation from one of the members that says, hey, this is, we went through that, this is what we came up with.
Fair.
And I think about like what that has done in terms of the curriculum and instruction committee and the
Teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning. Thank you. There it is. That's why you can feel me feeling for it. But in teaching and learning, I can think of multiple times where board members who have participated in that now are coming back and are clearly already a conduit for, oh yes, we had that conversation. This was interesting. This was my takeaway from what was involved in that dialogue. I think that's becomes really important. And if we could replicate something like that on the finance side, I think that becomes really helpful.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to continue?
Sure, why not? I have my lovely expense and revenue reports out as well. I won't bore you with getting into the weeds. I'll leave that for the Finance Committee someday. But right now, we actually are in very good shape. Our revenue, a lot of the revenue we have is starting to come in. For example, tuition revenue. I do want to remind you, though, this is February's report because it got pushed back because of the budget meeting. We kind of pushed everything forward. Next meeting, you're going to have the March report, and then obviously next month you'll have the April report. So this is the time where you can really start to see where things end up. We are in a healthy position right now. I think we're doing well. What we start doing now is digging into basically sped costs towards the end of the year. Those are the ones that kind of pop up at the last minute. If you have kids being provided services and things like that, and may not be encumbered. So I usually spend a lot of time, especially like going over that to make sure. But otherwise, we're pretty spot on right now. I am not losing any sleep over our budget at this point.
Yes, Brian.
I was reading your comment about 110 and the custodians. I don't really follow what's going on there.
What happens is, because we've had a lot of turnover on the custodian side, so what ends up happening is payroll, when they plug them in, they encumber their money, their funds for the whole year.
Okay.
When we turn them over, sometimes they forget to
Take them out.
And that's a payroll function. It's not my function. I have to go to payroll and go, all right, this is who I have. What do you have? And then once they pull them out, now it's no longer encumbered. That tends to happen a lot because we do have, that's a year-round hiring process for them, where teachers are generally summer.
Right. We have a decent amount of turnover.
Yeah, we've had a lot this year.
Yeah.
So that presumably wouldn't be that negative then?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions on the budget report? Okay, Brian, you're still on, I think. Right?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, he's done.
good.
Done.
Okay,
Now this Clayburg person's on next.
okay. Next, we have the school board meeting dates for 25-26. We decided in our non-public that we would have our retreat on May, what was the date? I wrote it down.
We have it on the 6th. This is a Tuesday, I believe.
Was it May 6th?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it was the 6th. It was not.
Yeah, oh, it's not a school board date. It's a Monday,
No.
wasn't it?
It's a Tuesday.
The 6th is a Tuesday.
All right, Tuesday, May 6th. Okay, so if everybody could make that change.
5 p.m.?
5 p.m.
And then does anyone have questions about
Next year, that's what I'm looking at.
any other dates on
So-
here? So we would take off the September 30th retreat, correct? But is that a school board meeting night? Would it generally be a school board meeting night?
Yes.
Okay, so that would stay on, it would just be a meeting, correct?
No, wait a minute. It would be the,
Weekend before, isn't
9
it?
and 7 is
oh,
16.
is that Rosh Hashanah?
7 is,
It's not
okay,
Rosh
was that it?
Hashanah, that's the 22nd.
maybe that's why we moved it to the 30th.
I think that's why we moved it, because of the holiday.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah is the 22nd.
Okay,
the
so
question?
keep that September 30th, but it will be a regular meeting. So the two meetings in September will be the 9th and the 30th.
So I do have a question.
Okay, yes.
So since this retreat in May is part of this school year, don't we have to add on a retreat for next school year at some point?
Good question.
May 26th.
Should we
Could be May 26th.
Down here in 26.
do it on the 26th of May?
No,
Oh.
2026.
Oh.
We're talking about next year.
Right.
Very retreat.
So we could make one of these meetings.
Oh, next
the
year.
retreat.
2026
Okay.
retreat.
How about if we make the May
And it's already
12th or
on
the
there.
May 26th, 2026 meeting a retreat?
Sure.
26th is probably the day after Memorial Day, if that
So maybe do the
moves
12th.
anybody.
So May 12th.
Yeah, let's do May 12th. It can always be
What?
changed, is the board. We'll have a new board by then, so we might have to, okay.
So we would set that at an earlier time, like we are this year, or would we leave it at the?
You mean for the retreat on May 12th,
Yep.
2026? It probably will start at 5. Like the retreat that we're doing on Tuesday, May 6th.
All right.
We don't put times on this, but just to keep that in mind. Okay. How does this look to everyone?
Those changes don't us on
May 6th.
May 6th.
Tuesday. Is that good for you?
It is. Matt's here, so you know. It's the same night as area meeting.
Yes, you know what I was going to do? I'll call Steve and ask him if we could do it at 4.
Okay.
Okay, how about if we do that?
Yep.
Okay, I thought of that. Patty, did you have a question? It
No.
looked like your hand was up.
No.
Okay. All right. Do we need a vote on this? I guess we do. Do we have a motion to approve the calendar for 25-26?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second.
Do we need an amendment to add those extra dates? Or-
Yeah, as amended.
As amended.
We can remember
Do
them.
not need to
I
do a
wrote them
roll
down.
call because Kerry has signed off. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, great.
Yeah, real quick on the calendar, just a slightly pedantic and annoying request is that we've been getting on the policy committee. We've been getting Google Calendar requests, which is love that. If we could do that for the school board meetings, it would make me very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like happy board members.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yes.
We all have SAU emails.
Yeah, it's much easier now, yeah.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, Brian French looked up who was on the finance committee. It's Byron and Lee. You're the two members of the finance committee.
Surprise.
You've been voluntold.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business, consideration and approval of leave of absence. Back.
So we discussed these in a non-public session. These are, let's get here. Sorry. So this is a fifth grade teacher at Dundero. This is coming on the heels of a maternity leave that was in the spring, and these are typically ones that we have approved in the past. So.
Okay, thank you. Consideration and approval of administrator contracts.
Do you want to
I'm
do?
sorry, I think
we'll
I'd
do all
like to
three.
move to accept the,
Thank you.
approve the leave of absence.
Second.
Okay, I was going to try to do both of them at the same time, but I guess we don't have to. Okay, all those in favor of the leave of absence?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll do the administrative contracts.
All right, administrative contracts. You have folks, your full set of administrators around the district. Keep in mind that we are in the midst, as we are doing a lot of negotiating with a lot of folks, that we are in ongoing conversation with the administrators. So we have not finalized their contracts and what the financial situation will look like for them. These are the folks who are continuing with us. So Dr. Maddie's not in here, but the rest of the administrative team is. You also note that there's 2 adjustments to locations to people from previous years. Stacy Weeks, the assistant principal for curriculum and instruction at the elementary schools, is now listed as DW, district-wide, as she'll be moving not just across the elementary schools, but up into the middle for some of her work, and Shea St. Laurent, who's been exclusively at the, in name has been exclusively at the high school, but has been working in a variety of different ways across the district, is moving into that role where she will then cross into the middle. She's also listed as a DW. And then Jackie Chisholm, who we've mentioned a couple times throughout the process, was the person who was a teacher on a teacher's contract who was doing curricular duties, was assigned to curricular duties, non-evaluative curricular duties, is then transitioning into becoming an assistant principal for academics, and her home base would be the high school. So the rest of the folks are unchanged in their roles, and we'd appreciate you approving their employment for the upcoming year.
Do we have a motion to approve the list of administrators for 25-26?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
What's next? Oh, consideration and approval of safety plan. Mr. Lynchy.
Tough when you're a new business presentation on a night. Kenny, we should have I apologize. We should have spotted that and moved you up if we had
That's
the
fine.
opportunity.
You know, I got some work done back there.
Good.
What's the score of the Celtics game? Were you watching that fight?
I can text Brooke, she'll let me know. My daughter, she's before for approval tonight is the district-wide safety plan. So back in November, Department of Labor, Steve would probably agree, we seem to be the town of inspections. We've had a lot of different state agencies come in and do evaluations. So what they realized with us is that we have everything in place, but we didn't have an identified safety plan for the school. Even though we are a department of the city, we need to have our own safety plan. So what we did with Brian and I, we went around and took a model and we recreated it and made it fit for Portsmouth schools. But part of that is we also had to add the student violence prevention plan as part of that. So that's what you're before you for tonight is for approval of that, so we can get that off to the state and check that final box. They also reviewed our joint loss management plan, and they also reviewed the student violence prevention plan before we added it to the safety plan. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Kenny. Do we have any questions for Kenny? Do we have a motion to approve?
I have
Oh,
a question,
you have a question?
which is
Okay.
not specific to Kenny. It's more about the discussions that we're having around executive orders. And it's at least, the issue is at least raised on page 4, where it says the district will comply with all relevant safety and health laws and regulations and will regularly update policies and practices to align with new changes. So I appreciate the sentiment behind that, and in any other circumstances, I would be fine with it. But it does concern me a little bit in terms of what may be coming down the pike in terms of laws that we may or may not decide we want to comply with. So I'm just cautious of blanket statements of compliance built into our plans and policies at this point.
Yeah, and I think the challenge will be is that the Department of Labor will expect, because to what extent they're going to have things that are going to be affected by, federal executive orders which don't reflect our values. It's hard to predict, but I think that the Department of Labor would expect in a report like this that we're saying we're going to follow labor regulations, in order for us to get their approval and not have them on us that we're not doing what we need to for our workforce. So I agree. I think what we're going to find is, which is going to be challenging, is we've got in a whole bunch of different, whether it's across policies, it's in handbooks, we have a whole bunch of things that, depending on what happens with some type of executive order, that there's this ripple across the pond that goes in a bunch of different directions that we can't totally anticipate. Because there's a lot of places where we say, hey, we're going to follow state regulations related to blank, or federal regulations related to, Y. And so I think it's hard to anticipate all those, and I think we may have to you know, we're gonna have to fight each of these battles step by step, I think, as we go. I would be hesitant to not tell the Department of Labor that our intent is to, you know, I don't know. I think it's,
Yeah, I
I
understand
think it's a
where you're coming
boilerplate thing that they're expecting from us.
Yes, I can see that it is too. As I said, I would never consider it an issue except for.
Of course,
our-
Going-
Exactly. So I think one of our public commenters mentioned, or suggested that we as a board and together with the city, if possible, come up with sort of a statement of where we're going to stand on these things and what values we're going to use to make these kinds of decisions. And I think that would be a really valuable thing for us to do as a board, because it's hard when we don't have something to stand behind, you know, and that something that we haven't all agreed to, that we could point to when things like this come up to decide whether or not we choose to comply. But I'm okay with it in here for now. I just wanted to flag that as another one of those places where that kind of language shows up.
Okay, thank you, Pip. Lisa?
I think I was going to ask the same question that Pip did, but the one thing I'm wondering about is we're thinking about would be in a normal year a very innocuous, and perfectly understandable and reasonable statement is, where possible, can we give it a little specificity? Like, we're in this context talking about occupational safety and not necessarily a whole host of other things that could tread into other directions. And I wouldn't presume to know like what the sort of labor or OSHA standards are for this type of statement, but I just would wonder where possible if we can try to tailor the language to what's exactly the matter at hand and not make it any broader of a mandate than it needs to be for us to, you know, we want our employees, our students, everybody in the building to be safe. And that goes without saying, but we don't necessarily want to tread too far maybe into a direction of how we might redefine safety in more of a political way than in the literal sense of the facilities being when you walk in, you're not going to get injured or, you know. So I guess that's what I just wonder. And I don't know if I have a good answer about that.
In some ways, as we think about some of these plans, how do we avoid
Yeah.
broad rhetorical flourishes that might
That are
lead to
unnecessary and
get us into stuff that
problematic.
we don't want to get into? Yeah. It's an interesting time that we even have to think that way.
Yeah, that is one word for it.
Any other comments? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the safety plan?
Just one quick
Oh, yes,
question.
I didn't see you, Lee, I'm sorry.
To Lisa's comment, then, would it make sense to actually make an adjustment to the proposal? And, for example, even in where we're saying district comply with all relevant safety and health laws and regulations, put that in regards to the context that it is in, as opposed to just being a blanket statement.
Can you say that again? I couldn't
So,
hear you.
so what I'm suggesting is that, do we actually contextualize the statement in bullet 1, for example, where it says that the district will comply with all relevant safety and health laws and regulations and will regularly update policies and practices to align with these new changes? Do we actually contextualize that a little bit further in order to address those issues?
Can you suggest some language?
Not really.
The Department of Labor is pretty strict on some of this wording, and the wording actually came from the department. A lot of it came from the Department of Labor and other districts and things like that. When we went over it with our representative from the Department of Labor, we had passed muster as far as it on there. I understand your concern about it, but I think the Department of Labor really is not in the realm of some of the educational stuff that's going on right now. I don't foresee them, making a decision that would affect or lessen the safety of our employees, staff, and students. I mean, that's my concern.
Okay, is everyone okay with that?
We didn't have a motion yet. A motion.
I think it's hard. I think it would be hard. I'm not even sure how to. Let's say hypothetically that we wanted to it'd be hard to wordsmith this large a document here. And if we wanted to push it back to this other group, I also think it's hard to give them instructions as to what they're trying to do. And so I don't know that we can, you know, kind of wacky Washington proof this at the moment. I think that I think as these guys are saying, a lot of this is boilerplate stuff that is really like expectations from the Department of Labor in order to get through with them. I think we'd be well advised to accept this, and then if we need to get into the fights on it and revise it and change it later as a result of some things that get thrown our way, that might be the way to go. Because I don't know how we would. I know I'm not in a position to take it individually and try to figure out how to rework it without all these other people at the table, and I'm not even sure how to. I'd say, you know, Kenny Bryan, here's the rubric for how you can snuff out what might be problematic and how to rework it. I think that'd be really challenging. So.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we say, oh, we're going to do it boilerplate for everything, and if that's the
Yeah,
case,
no, I know.
that becomes
I hear you.
concerning too, right?
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
And I suppose where it says update policies, that could go to Pip and the policy committee, and it could be a discussion of the policy committee.
Motion to,
Okay.
motion to
So there's
approve.
a motion on the table. All in favor?
We're gonna get a second. I need a second.
Oh, we didn't have a second? Oh.
No, I got one. Brian, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Kenny.
Thanks again.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the committee to study future school building needs. This was an idea that I had. With all the building going on in Portsmouth, housing developments, I think it said in the paper the other day, it's 1,500 units that are being built. It's already starting now and in the near future. So my idea was to just set up a committee to study if families are moving into these units, and if they are, what modifications do we have to make to particularly our elementary schools? I know I was on the joint building committee when we did the high school, and we built the high school for 1,500 students, and right now, what do we have, 1,000, 1,100 in the high school? So it doesn't look like the high school would be a problem, and our middle school, I believe, can handle more than the current population. It might not be.
It all depends on
it might not be
programming
as generous.
choices.
Yeah,
Right,
it might not be
right.
as generous as what the high school is, but our elementaries could be a challenge. So, as I said here, if necessary, can we add on to our existing schools? Should we consider building a new school, which is being dramatic? But to prove my point, I put that in there. So I thought maybe we could put a committee together that would meet with our planning director or his designee, Director of Buildings and Grounds, Ken Litchi, and then Superintendent Zach or his designee. And we would just meet maybe 3 times a year, but as the developments become built and we realize we have families, we might have to increase the number of meetings. So I don't know how everybody feels about this, but yes, Lee and then Lisa.
Yeah, and I apologize. The leave of absence makes me a little bit ignorant here. So I thought we were going to start a facilities committee, and did we not do that?
We have one.
We have a facilities committee.
Wouldn't some of this fall under the facilities committee?
We could restructure it. We could structure it like that. We could make it a responsibility of the facilities committee, if that's what everyone
Just a
thinks
thought,
is a good
all right.
idea.
Sorry.
Okay, let's
I
do
apologize
Lisa
for my
and Pip,
ignorance.
and then we.
Well, Lee kind of asked my question, because I like the idea of us keeping tabs on new developments so that we can do, to the best of our ability, a more ongoing job of monitoring where families might be moving into the district. But I'm a little confused about if we have the facilities committee and they're already doing the ongoing planning for what sort of construction and capital projects we need, whether this would be duplicating that effort. Like, I'm wondering, like, do we already have someone from planning on the facilities committee? No?
No.
Because it feels like that might be the one piece of facilities that's missing if we're trying to put this together.
So
Maybe it's separate? I don't know. Sorry.
I
You
think,
realize that you're on the facility?
yes, I do know. And I think I actually like this idea because I know, Nancy, you did mention initially that this could be part of the facilities committee. But I actually see this as pretty separate, and I think,
Okay.
and I actually think it would benefit from having other people who are more data-driven, like our redistricting committee type people. But besides the fact of who's doing it or not, I do think that we could have, had we had this committee a while back, we could have avoided some of the challenges that happened with our redistricting over the years, including the modulars and things like that. So I think it's a great idea to keep tabs on the growth. But I think, I don't know that it needs to I don't know that the overlap is necessary. I think this committee could inform the facilities committee of growth or changes. But I don't know that I would recommend having, like, Ken on this committee, since he's already part of the facilities committee. So I don't think that we need so much overlap if we have both of them. But I actually would appreciate having the two separate committees, because I think there's enough work for the facilities committee to do just to sort of be the liaison between all the other projects that are already going on, and not have to get involved in all the future needs as well. Or not try to estimate what those future needs are going to be.
Tish?
So adding on to what you're saying, I agree with that. Should we add just a member of the facilities committee on this? We can take Ken off, as you said, but add a member of the facilities committee on.
The problem is Pip is the only person on the facilities
she is?
committee. So she might as well be on one committee then.
Okay.
We could add to the facilities committee. We could ask a board member if they would like to be on the facilities committee.
Yeah, it can take 1 to 2
I
members.
think Lee had expressed interest previously.
On the facilities committee? Okay, good. Okay, well, let's have a motion. Do we have a motion to approve the future school building needs committee? We can discuss and then vote.
Motion to approve.
Lee?
So moved. Second. Whoever said that. whoever-
Brian, yes.
Okay. All right, discussion. Do we want to have the building committee, the school building needs committee? Any more comments on it? Yes?
I do think I do agree with Pep that it seems like a separate than the facilities. But we should discuss the members, because I don't think we actually agreed on who the members are. I think that needs to be clear before we vote on it.
Okay, who would you like to suggest the members?
Well, again, everyone on here, I don't think Ken needs to be on there, the grounds, facilities. And to add someone from facilities, Pip, I think that would be prudent. That's really it.
Okay.
I also would say perhaps the superintendent doesn't need to be on this committee. Because if we think about this committee as sort of a body that's sort of monitoring the growth, those people could report back to all of us and not take up more of Zach or Patty's time. I'm just aware of how many of those things you guys sit through it is only, the plan is only to meet 3 times a year, so maybe it's not an issue, but I don't know if it's necessary.
I don't have to charge for the facilities committee in front of me, so I'd be super hesitant anytime we're talking about the long-term physical plant needs of the system to not have Kenny at the table as part of those dialogues, just for his experience and his understanding of those projects, and trying to think about, always in the process of thinking about how we're going to potentially finance those things and where needs are. I just think there's an element that Kenny can bring to that nobody else can bring. So even if I'm at the table, I'm just going to be a lot of times being like, Kenny, what do you think? There's times where I could bring unique stuff. I wonder about the amount, again, looking back at the facilities committee and the amount of work that's present for that group, and to what extent this can be rolled into that.
Okay, well, Kenny could be your designee. It says Superintendent McLaughlin or his designee. so Kenny could.
Kenny's used for
designate
me.
someone else to cover
Kenny's
that.
used to be designating him for a lot of things, so.
I could just, I just say something real quick. So the what we call the summary of the facilities committee is to meet and discuss facility needs and long-term planning as related to the budget. That's how it's defined now. But it does have some overlap with the way that's defined, future school building needs. So I understand the differences, though, that you guys are saying.
Lisa, yes, Lisa, I'm tired.
We're all tired. Yeah, I guess if it makes sense to have two separate committees, like I'm unopposed to it. I was just trying to understand like what the separate mission is, so that makes a little more sense to me. I think one thing I'm wondering as we went through the CIP and the budget discussion this year, we did hear from some parents who were wondering if there would be any potential to have community representatives somewhere. And I think we landed on not doing that as part of facilities, but it does seem like it could be potentially valuable if this is about where families moving in, to try to have somebody in the community with kids who might be talking to other people at the playground, at least sort of in the mix. I don't know if that's what the goal of this one is, but I know that was an ask that we had from people several times during public comment, to have some opportunity to have a community member.
I thought of a real estate person, so maybe that could be a community
This was
member.
more an ask, I think, from parents in the community to feel like they had a little bit more ability to hear what's being contemplated and share their thoughts as the process is unfolding. So it's not like a real estate question, I think, as much as an ask to have a chance to have a seat at the table in some of the discussions.
How do people feel about that?
I think it's a valid point.
Okay. All right, so the vote is, the motion has been amended a little bit. We'll keep Kenny on the committee, we'll add a community member, and okay, so let's just vote on that.
I have one other question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, who's chairing it?
Well, we have to ask for, I was thinking 2 board members, so we'll have one of those 2 board members be the chair, or maybe both board members could co-chair. How does that sound?
It's gonna be Byron.
Yeah.
You just nominate Byron for everything.
Yeah, talk about finance.
You're
and-
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, sorry, the question was,
Who would the chair be?
Just so we know who is sort of in charge of convening this.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can take, I will take the charter on this specific committee, and chairing. Yeah.
So you're on this committee?
Yeah.
Okay. We haven't even voted on it yet, but
No,
that's okay.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Byron. And then I think another board member would be great. If anybody wants to express their interest, let us know. And why don't we vote on it? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. And now, while we're at it, I think, Pip, do you agree it would be nice to have another board member on the facilities committee?
Yes.
Okay, so if please
Nope.
come to Brian and me.
We're on a roll.
Oh, Lee, are you interested in the facilities committee?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good.
Then we have
That
that.
didn't change
So
from the
it's
last
Pip and
5
Lee.
minutes.
Many things have changed.
Okay, so we're all set. We just needed the second board member for this new committee. Does anybody want to volunteer right now? Or if you want to think about it and let us know?
I will.
Right,
Okay. Yay.
new friends.
Okay. Okay, I think we're all set. And actually, yeah, I think Kenny's a good idea, because one thought I had was, what if we say, oh, it would be great, we need to build an addition at Little Harbor. Well, Kenny would know immediately that that probably isn't possible because of, you know, the land that Little Harbor.
He might save you a lot of
Right.
time.
So questions like that, I think Kenny would be valuable in answering.
Also a good plug for the fact that Kenny is also pulled in a lot of different directions, and the for Kenny that we're talking about as part of our full budget proposal is important.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on, we have the board chair and vice chair memo, appropriate ways to respond to public complaints. That was just a report that Brian and I made to the board with the help of Zach. So I hope everybody had a chance to read that. Any questions about that? Yes, Pip?
Yeah, I did want to just talk a little bit about this because I feel like I have previously expressed, at least in non-public and through emails to the board or to board leadership, that I have some concerns that voices of particular board members have been silenced and that there's sort of this systemic silencing of outlying opinions. And I don't know the reasons, and I don't purport to know the reasons why Liz Barrett resigned today, but I fear that that's part of it, and I do feel like she was somebody who was targeted in that way. And so I just wanted to, I agreed with her representation that she did not speak about a particular employee. She was raising concerns that were brought to her from the community, and I think that's part of our role and a very important part of our role as board members to represent what we're hearing from the community. So I just want to be careful that we're not eliminating that opportunity to be that conduit from the community to the board. And I also want to say that I think that we lost a strong voice today from Liz, Liz's resignation, and I will miss her willingness to speak up about the hard things and ask tough questions. And I think that we should thank her for her service in doing that and not being afraid of representing everybody.
I've sent her an email, so thanking her, and she will be missed. Anyone else? Okay, Pip, thank you. Okay, then moving on to committee updates. You have the superintendent evaluation for March 21st. Future agenda requests. I haven't received any, but please let us know, Brian and me, if you're interested. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a calm now. Well, we still have the budget. We still have the budget.
You just said that word, oh no.
Okay.
Always seems like there's something.
Yeah.
Well,
We still got plenty on
Well,
our
we still have
plates
the
right
budget.
now.
Okay, we can reopen the public comment in person only. Would either of you like to speak? State your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. You know the drill.
Julie Gallett, 10 Fletcher Street. I just want to thank Pip for speaking tonight. And I just want to highlight that the systemic silence of opinions isn't only coming from people on the board expressing that. There's a lot of community members that feel that way as well. I'm sad that Liz is gone. I do think that she did a great job representing those outlying opinions. And it's really important that we have voices like that on the board. I'd also like to request that the person that's sitting in this room today with her request, I feel like that's something that needs to be addressed by the superintendent at some point, whether there's some type of, I don't want to get involved in everything, but I do think there needs to be some type of apology after hearing the process that she went to and reaching out to you. So, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
you close public comment.
Oh, I have to close the public comment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor?